All right, let's get this first clap going.
Yep.
On 3. 1, 2, 3. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash. And as always, I am joined by my co-hostess with the mostess, Christy Oxborrow. How you feeling?
Oh, I'm feeling great. I think for me, I'm more curious based on some revelations you had for me last week, how you're feeling.
Oh, yes. Are you referring to my at-home project?
I am.
Yes. Yes. Dear listeners, if you missed last week, I revealed on the show that I had started a little DIY situation here at my home. I believe I used the term, if my mouth looks full, that's because I've bitten off more than I can chew. Refinishing all of my patio furniture. I have a fair amount of this wooden patio furniture. A lot. It's a lot of pieces. It's very large. Anyway, long story short, here's the headline news. Shame on me. Shame on me for doubting myself.
There she is.
Yes, I have done a fabulous job, may I say.
Yes.
I'm almost finished. I just need to do a final coat of my spar urethane that I'm using. And I don't want notes from people who say that they don't think that's the thing I should be finishing with, because due to my research, that's what I think works best for me. So I need to do my final coat tomorrow morning, and then I am 100% finished.
Hey,
yes.
Good for you.
Now I do have a wooden dining set out there that I have not done yet that I do intend to do. But it's in an area in my backyard that's shaded. And so it hadn't kind of had the same, it hasn't weathered in the same way. So it wasn't really as much of a priority for me. The rest of the furniture, I was like, it's dire. It's gotta be dealt with.
Out in like direct sunlight all day.
Yes. So I've also purchased covers for all of the furniture that I will be placing on them when it's not in use. They have not arrived yet, but I look forward to it. So bottom line, I'm putting the capital J in jazzed. I am very proud of my own accomplishments. I'm proud of the fact that I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, and I literally just taught myself from a little thing called Google.
Well, I'm proud of you for giving it a go.
Thank you muchly.
Good for you.
That. And I'll tell you this too. With two things. One, I'll put up some before and afters on our socials because people have been asking, and I'm happy to give them. I just want to make sure I have the full presentation ready.
Of course. I was actually going to ask if we could put them up on Thursday for the Throwback Thursday.
Oh, I think that's nice. I mean, the first one, absolutely. But then when I get like the full big schmozzle, you know what I mean? Like the whole thing in place.
We can wait till next Thursday. If you want to wait for you want the showpiece.
There's new cushion covers coming. There's a new outdoor carpet coming. Like I want it to be a moment if we're going to do it.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
You want to build. You want to build it to you're an artist and you're building your piece. You're building your art installation.
That's exactly what it is. I'm having a Jonathan Scott before and after moment is what I'd like to have. Shout out to the Property Brothers. How have we never mentioned them on this show before?
Because that is the Property Brothers are Blanche's official Sophie's choice.
Of course.
They have the same face, but not.
Yeah.
Like one's business and one's rugged. Like
I love that.
I don't know what's happening.
I love that.
But right now. What?
I want to say this. This is my message to everybody out there. If there's a project that you think you can do within reason, now I'm not saying put yourself at some sort of actual like danger,
of course,
or risk. But if there's something that you think, I think that's out of my wheelhouse, I think that's out of my capabilities, just go for it. Because the sense of pride I have every time I look outside at that GD furniture, let me tell you something, it's a 12 out of 10.
Yes.
Yeah.
And look, I'll say this. You had mentioned that I had inspired to make you think you could do it based on last year's backyard reno. And I'm going to say this. The whole time I've lived in this house, our backyard is not very big, but it was always 10 by 10 foot cement pad in the middle of the yard. And then a huge gazebo and little patches of grass around it. It wasn't fun. Fun for somebody who would go sit outside, not fun for children frolicking. I don't know how much my kids frolic. The point is, it's now all grass. Recently, it got mowed. Every time I'm near the window into the backyard. Oh, I stare at it like an old woman who feels a storm coming. Like
Oh yeah.
it is so beautiful. It is lush.
Yeah.
I told my husband, I said, we have never had a backyard look this nice, not even at the house we lived in before that had quite a large backyard. I couldn't be happier with the choice that I made to go for it because, wow, yeah, every time I look at it, it's like it looks so big. It looks so much better than it did. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say there was there's obviously like I had to cut a few corners. I learned some things. If I was doing it again, I'd do differently. But ultimately, I do think there is something that is very satisfying about just trying to figure it out yourself and doing it. And listen, if I had gotten to a point that I was like, this is just really out of my wheelhouse, then I could have passed it off. But I didn't. I didn't. Now, granted, again, like, did I have a bad sunburn the one day because I misapplied my back sunscreen when I was out there? Yeah, sure I did. Sure I did. Was there a split second I took my eye off of Peaches, and because she's blind, mostly blind, and I was on the other side of the pool, which I never normally am, ever, 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 ever. I think it messed with her routine and her path. And I turned for a second then, and then I just heard the sounds of her going into that pool. And oh my word. Oh my God. I mean, I could cry now talking about it. It was horrific. I mean, I've never been in that pool fully clothed quicker. I'll tell you that. But yeah, it was bad. It was bad. I think she was confused. I think she was like turned around. She's fine. She's completely fine. She got a full bath afterwards, obviously, because she was coming out of that chlorine water. And yeah, but it shook her. It definitely shook her. I'll say that.
Yes. Well, I'm safe to say it shook you both.
Oh, it shook us both. It definitely shook us both. I think for me, it was like the guttural scream that I gave, followed by a color that I don't normally wear, which was, and this is shocking for me because normally this doesn't come out. It's okay. Everything's going to be fine. You're fine. You're going to be fine. When on the inside, I was screaming. I mean, in that moment, I truly was a mother.
Oh, I would say you're a mother all the time. I've seen you have to give them medications and all of those things. So yeah, I would say quite often you're a mother. There are times we're recording, I think even in the last episode, where in the middle of a record, you had to pick a child up.
Yep.
Because you had a child come to you and go, hey, Ma.
Yep.
Ma, what you doing?
Yeah.
I could sit anywhere in this house. I want to be here. And you picked her up because you're a goddamn mother.
Listen, oh God, it was awful. I don't want to talk about it too much because I also don't want to traumatize other people, but it was just terrible. And again, it was one of those things where it's what you hear every mother say or every parent say, where it's like, I took my eyes off of them. I mean, my eyes weren't even fully off of her was part of it because I was doing something and I was checking in. Do you know what I mean? And then it was like my body was opened to her. Like it was like, she's never not in my sight because normally when we're back there, I take a dog bed out there and she just sits beside me while again, for this entire DIY project, I had a shop dog out there with me in her little bed. She sleeps out there in the shade. She never leaves my side. So that's the thing is that she's never out of my line of view. And she wasn't then, but it was literally like my head turned 10 degrees. Plunk. It was awful. It was awful. But again, she's fine. So everything's fine. It's got a great happy ending, but yeah. What a little nugget. I had a meeting earlier on Zoom and I think earlier this morning, she still wasn't over it. It was still a trauma for her. And she came up to me and was like, can I sit with you? And then she just slept in my lap the entire time. And I was like, I see what's happening here. You've been through a trauma.
Yes. And when she wakes up from her current nap, she might toddle over.
She might.
And that's just what she does.
We hear the little tick, 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 tick of those nails on the hardwood floor. And yeah. But anyway, thank you for asking. I appreciate the check-in and I am very proud of my work. I got to be honest. I'm very proud.
You should be.
Yeah.
You did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, just got to put that last coat on. And then, of course, put out the new carpet, put out the new, oh God, my harbor came out there for a second, put out the new carpet, put out the new cushion covers, all of those kinds of things, jazz it up. But that'll be done by the time this comes out. That'll be done by the time this comes out. So yeah.
Well, there you go. Look at you. You want to put your stamp on it.
Yep.
I get it.
Stamp of approval. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. That makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you kindly. What's the headline news with you? What's going on over there?
Well, I mean, I had a public plea that I wanted to make.
Oh my word.
Now, as everyone knows, I'm sure by now, especially those that watch the video, I am a fan of the Funko Pops.
Yeah.
But I've noticed that like so many, like a show will come out, like I think Squid Game was hot for like half a second. And it was like, look at the new Squid Games Funko Pops. They're coming out now. And I'm like, already? God, they're fast. Finger on the pulse, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a few they've missed.
Yeah.
So I would like to have a plea to the people at Funko. Again, I adore your product. Yes. If you could only see my home and my email to see how many Funko Pops that are currently being shipped to my home. They don't pay us. I'm not even looking for them to pay me. I'm just looking for this small list.
Please.
If I may.
So this is Funkos that they don't currently have that you would like to see.
Correct. I mean, I'm going to start with 2 that do exist, but I have variants that I would like made.
Thank you.
I'm not even saying just for me. If I'm the only one that wants one, I'll pay extra for you to just make the one. But I guarantee other people are going to be interested. The little 7-Eleven Slurpees.
Yeah.
You have 4 little flavors. They're very cute. I'd like to see a green lime. And I'd like to see a Coke or Pepsi, if I'm being honest. Yeah. The Schitt's Creek Funkos.
Yeah.
Now, I touched on this when I spoke with Casey on our True Crew Pets. Yeah. I did a live with her yesterday. Shout out Casey and shout out at Not Pet Detectives. But we got into talking about Schitt's Creek, and I mentioned that Blanche has a bit of a thing for Johnny Rose. And I immediately this is the sickness in me. I was like, you know what? I want a shelf back there that's full of Blanche favorites. So I was like, I'm going to need a Johnny Rose. And I looked it up and his hair is jet black. But on the show, his hair is so beautifully gray and silver that I'm like, that's the Johnny Rose magic. I want the silver hair and the nice suit. So a silver haired variant would be nice.
Love that.
The rest of this now is a list in chronological order of when they came out,
of course,
to let them know of ones that I would like to exist. I would like from the 1987 movie Overboard. Specifically, I would like a Kurt Russell with his thumbs in his shirt.
Oh, yes.
100%. I would like Funkos from the 1991 movie Point Break.
Oh, yes.
The 1993 movie Mrs. Doubtfire.
Okay. Now we're getting somewhere.
Well, here's where it's going to get real for you. The 1994 movie Speed. I want Jack. I want Jack and Annie handcuffed to a pole. I want Jack and Annie sliding on a section of bus. I want the mustache guy in the truck holding the paper, looking back so you know he's about to say, I guess they fell behind.
Fell on a time. Fuck. Fell behind. Yes.
I want all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. Even just like, here's a little bus in a Funko package. Sure, I'll buy it. I'll buy the whole series.
I'll even take Dennis Hopper. I'll even take him with his gnarled hand. You know what I mean? And then the other hand reaching across, holding the phone like he does.
Please. And I'd like a Jeff Daniels as he knows he's about to be blown up.
Yeah.
I want also we got our scumbag. I want one of those. Come on. These write themselves, Funko. Again, I'm not asking for you to send me any of these for free once you've made them. I wouldn't say no, but
Yeah.
I'm willing to pay for these.
Yeah.
Because I think these are going to be real money makers.
I'd like the entire Speed collection. Absolutely.
Yes. I'm not saying I have to help design. I would just like to be CC'd on the emails.
Sure.
I'd like to see what's coming.
Sure.
I'm just saying. Oh God, even a little Sandra gum, like with a little gum on her finger.
Gum. Yeah.
I love it. The 1995 movie, Empire Records.
Oh, wow.
I want a Rex Manning. I want Warren holding up the CDs. I want Lucas holding a couch cushion. The 1997 movie, Face Off. I want Castor Troy. I want a larger Castor Troy walking out of a plane while his coat is being blown in the wind.
Yep, there it is.
Yep. I want the 1999 classic 10 Things I Hate About You, including an exclusive one of Patrick Verona singing on the soccer field.
Yep.
2003 Love Actually. I want Mark holding a sign. I can't think of what his name is in the movie, but I want Mr. Bean putting on the gloves as he's like, it's a cinnamon twist or whatever. I want all of that. I would like an entire series from the 2015 show Superstore.
Yes, which I have pitched before. And I've also said the Hot Topic Dina exclusive should be in the sexy cop costume. This writes itself.
I mean, again, if I have to pretend to be someone else and put on a beard and get into like a meeting where I'm like a focus group and I'm like, oh, I've never heard of these Funkos before. If I have to do that to get these things made, I'll do that. And I have the beard in the closet.
I was going to say many of our listeners and viewers have seen you in the beard. And all I can say is there's a certain gravitas you bring in that beard. So I think that your word would go a long way.
Look, I'm willing to do what I need to do.
Thank you.
And just two more. One, I would like the Foo Fighters.
Oh,
I would like a little Dave Grohl to just sit back there because, again, my dream is to try and fill one of those shelves with Blanche Funkos. I have a Paul Rudd from Ghostbusters Afterlife. How many people, Funko, are buying the Mr. Gruberson Funko Pop? And the answer is me.
Show us the numbers. Give us the spreadsheets. You know what I mean?
Right?
Yes.
And I already own 3 Keanu Reeves Funko Pops, and I have 2 more coming because I felt like I should as a nod to Keanu. Why? I don't know. I don't even play the game that one of the characters is from.
Doesn't matter.
It is what it is. The point is, that's where I'm at. And this last one. Can I also
just pitch one other thing too?
Yes.
Another exclusive Dave Grohl of him when he had broken his leg or his foot. Remember?
In the Throne.
In the Throne. Come on.
100%. See, again, just ask and we can give you the regular set. We can give you the variants. Come on. Yep. One final one. This might not be as hot a seller as the others.
Okay.
But I know at least 2 people are going to buy the entire set. Gymnasts from the 1996 Atlanta Olympics.
We have specific countries in mind.
Yeah.
That is
you only have to make 2 if you want.
Yep.
We'll each buy them. That's 4 right there.
Yep.
Yeah. But that 100%. Is my passionate plea to Funko. If you ever need someone for a focus group, let me know because I'm interested. I have experience, not in focusing, but in Funko Pops in general.
And what I'd like to say is, I don't know if they hire consultants, but if they do, I'd like to put your hat in the ring.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would accept any help that I could get into getting in there because I think me and one of their artists could make a beautiful Speed series.
The Speed series feels like a no-brainer. And it does also feel like, aren't we coming up to the 30 year?
This year is only 28, but
But we're coming up to the 30 year.
I know, right?
Yeah. So again, it's like there's going to be potentially more fervor. I feel like it's,
Yes. And if nothing else, we've talked about it and gotten people into it.
yeah.
So I'm just saying, think about it.
Looks like they fell behind. I always get mixed up and thinks he says, looks like they ran out of time, but it's not. It's fell
There's
behind.
just this writes itself.
Yeah.
There are so many. And look, if I have to, I'll wait for the 10 Things I Hate About You, Face Off, and Empire Records ones if Speed gets first. And then can we please get that Kurt Russell with his thumbs in his tank?
I would also like to pitch a Goldie Hawn. A couple of Goldie Hawns. One of her in the bikini with like the long braid from the beginning.
Yes.
And then another one of her in like one of the terrible outfits, like the outfit she goes home from the hospital in.
I would also like one of her in the hospital gown with her face, that face she's making when it goes on camera. I would like that. I would like the kids, but I want one of the kids, his name on the box to be Roy.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to have one where she's wearing her little macaroni necklace.
Oh,
man overboard's kissing woman overboard, sir. It's just love that movie so much.
I love that movie so much also. I mean, it's true. I feel like that was like a really that was a big moment for maybe not all of the people from our generation, but certainly for you and I think that was big in our development. I'd also like to just give a quick shout out because we did very sadly lose Mike Haggerty, who played, of course, Bad Billy Pratt in Overboard. He is an extremely hilarious Second City improviser, comedian, and actor. And that is such a loss. It was so very sad and a wonderful man. I've met him a few times. He was on Chicago Party Ant as well.
He also danced with Joey Tribbiani.
There you go. But truly salt of the earth, just like great guy. And again, I remember I met him at Second City years ago when I was on the main stage there in Chicago. And I think I said something about Bad Billy Pratt. I was just like taken aback in the moment, and he was kinder than he needed to be. Yeah.
If we could get a Bad Billy Pratt holding the envelope because he's got the photos he's made with just a little peek of the underwear coming out of his pocket.
Oh,
writes itself.
Oh, Gertie, don't be like that. It does write itself.
Oh God.
I know.
Yeah. Look, I also, you'll love this. Normally, if I have if they're episode notes, I keep them and I put them in the file of all these files of the 80 some files that I have.
Of course.
But if I have something such as this list of Funkos that I'm going to mention off the top, just something I need to write down to be able to reference, I usually just recycle it. I have a nice little recycling bin right beside me. I just toss in. I'm going to keep this one because I want to see if it comes out that any of these get made, I want to be I want to feel like it was because of me. I've also written down, I'd love a set of mannequin ones.
Oh, sure. You love Mannequin.
I love that movie. Are you kidding me? Can you imagine a little Hollywood? Come on. He would be adorable. Oh, please just
listen. If we're going to go down that road, then I'm going to put my one out there, which is I want Weekend at Bernie's. I want
100%.
If they don't already
the two
exist,
of them, and then I want the two of them. Yes.
And by the way, very quickly, and then we'll get to it.
Yeah.
But I watched that movie again during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And we can get all into what's comedy, what's whatever, blah, blah, blah. That movie is funny, and I don't care what anybody says. It's fucking funny. There are bits in there that made me laugh out loud. I think it's one of those movies that got written off as being oh, whatever. And there's moments that make me laugh. One of the most comedic moments ever is they witness the bad guy doing something wrong. Sure. And Jonathan Silverman goes, I was looking at my watch. And then Andrew McCarthy goes, I'm blind. And it's just the delivery of it. I love it. I met Jonathan Silverman. Again, I'm not trying to name drop, but this also connects. I met Jonathan Silverman at a party, and I literally was like, you have no idea. Genuinely, I am a big fan of yours. He was a lovely, lovely, lovely human. But anyway, point being is, Yes, I want those Weekend at Bernie's pops if they don't exist, and I'm guessing they probably don't, but
I
they
don't
should.
think so. Again, I did my best to double check to make sure none of these did. I'm sure people make custom ones all the
Yes.
time. But you'll love this. I want the real thing,
I know.
because I also feel like, okay, the Olympic ones, maybe not. But you can't tell me, with how nostalgic the world is right now,
Yes.
that some of these wouldn't hit.
Oh, you've
Speed,
chosen
Mrs. Doubtfire, like Mrs. Doubtfire with her little vacuum, Mrs. Doubtfire with her face
the-
all, hello.
the cake. Yeah, yeah. I think
We're
you've
his
compiled.
goddamn kids too.
Oh, that's right.
You know, like there's just, I want even a Funko Pop of the goat eating that fucking soccer cake.
Oh yeah.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. Like, so see, I have like 1,000 I want. I'm willing to narrow it down to like a cool 750.
Yeah.
Again, I'm here to make you money, Funko.
I love it. I love this business model, and I think you've compiled an amazing list. Also, I will just add, do we know what year, well, you mentioned it. What year did Mrs. Doubtfire come out?
93.
1993. So I'll let you in on a little secret. 10-year-old
Yeah.
Lauren Ash started feeling real feelings for Matthew Lawrence that were very confusing to her. Just know that. Anyway,
I have had very strong feelings about each of the Lawrence brothers at a different point in my life.
and that's a gift. That's a gift.
My main one is forever going to be Joey, of course.
Whoa.
Yeah. But I'll tell you this, Andrew came into his own.
Of course. On that note, listen, what a wild ride.
Yeah.
This episode of the show, we're talking about Rico Harris and Bison Dele. Did I say Bison correctly?
I assume.
Okay.
Yeah.
Listen, well, forgive me.
That's
dear
how
listeners.
I've been pronouncing it.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, if you are not familiar with these two cases, then we're going to get into it right now with a little bit of background. In this episode of True Crime and Cocktails, we will cover two separate cases. The first involves Rico Harris, a former Harlem Globetrotter who vanished during a road trip from Southern California to Seattle. His car was found abandoned 3 days later. Then there's the case of Bison Dele, a former NBA star who vanished on a boating trip with his girlfriend, his brother, and a captain. Of the 4 people on board, Bison's brother is the only one who has been seen since. Bison has been missing for almost 20 years, and Rico has been missing for more than 7. While the cases aren't connected, Christy couldn't help but see the similarity of 2 former basketball players who somehow disappeared without a trace. How can 2 men, both measuring nearly 7 feet tall, just vanish without anyone noticing? Christy Oxborrow investigates.
Again, I don't know if we've ever done it this way before. Usually it's one, and then sometimes I'll bring in one partway through. But yeah, I heard about the one and went, oh yeah, but then realized it's not going to be enough to do an entire thing. And I thought we'd get in trouble if we put out an episode that's only an hour.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever put out an episode that's only an hour. But no, that's not the point. No. So disclaimer, of course, to start off the episode, this episode will contain mentions of verbal and physical abuse, suicide, and substance abuse. So trigger warning for those who need it. Rico Omar Harris was born May 19th, 1977 in Los Angeles, California. His mother, Margaret Fernandez, was a caregiver, and his father, Henry Harris, was a semi-professional basketball player who played for Idaho State. When Henry received a job offer, the family moved to Oregon, but soon moved back to Los Angeles and had 3 more children. Henry was described as a loving husband who occasionally would turn violent. He was known to abuse his children physically and verbally, taking out most of his wrath on Rico. When Margaret finally left Henry, she moved the children to Alhambra, a town in Los Angeles County. Rico was described as the glue that held the family together. Margaret worked full-time to provide for the children, and Rico would often take care of his siblings. Due to his immense height, which would reach 6'9" in later years, Rico was naturally gifted when it came to basketball. By the age of 15, though, he didn't seem interested in the sport at all. A year later, Rico decided to give basketball another chance, and he put so much pressure on himself to succeed. He told his mother, quote, "One day we're going to make it big so you won't have to work again." He was always described as having NBA level potential and that he had a natural talent. After graduating from Temple City High School, Rico attended Arizona State University in the fall of 1995. As a freshman, though, he wasn't eligible to play. Then in March 1996, along with two fellow teammates, Rico was arrested after two women said the players forced them to perform sex acts against their will. However, they were charged with unlawful imprisonment, but there were a lot of inconsistencies in the women's stories, so the charges were dropped. But because of the controversy, Arizona State refused to play Rico the following season, so he returned to California, where he enrolled in Los Angeles City College. In 1997, he led the college to their very first state championship, where Rico was named MVP of the tournament. Multiple universities reached out to Rico, but he didn't respond to them, believing that they were only interested in his playing ability as opposed to his personal development. Rico declared himself for the 1998 NBA draft. Scouts saw a lot of potential in him, saying that Rico was, quote, Lamar Odom before Lamar Odom.
Oh, interesting.
Due to his performance, the scouts invited Rico to a pre-draft camp in Chicago, but shortly before he was meant to leave, Rico declined as he felt he wasn't personally ready for that level yet. He then withdrew from the draft entirely. Rico was offered the chance to play at the University of Rhode Island in the fall of 1998, even signing a letter of intent to attend. But partway through the semester, Rico stopped going to a psychology class that he needed to pass, which resulted in a failing grade. This left him ineligible under NCAA rules to transfer to a four-year college to play. Some believe Rico did this on purpose in order to stay closer to home. And so instead of going to Rhode Island, Rico played a second season for LA City College, but this time Rico started to party heavily, drinking during the day to take the edge off his hangovers. While he was still at the top of his game, the coaches felt that Rico was a disruptive influence on the team. Around this time, Rico attempted to reconnect with his estranged father, but was rejected, which caused his drinking to increase. He also started experimenting with speed, which allowed him to stay in the gym to work on jump shots for 10 hours straight. Rico transferred to Cal State Northridge, where he received another suspension and missed the final 2 games of the season. The trouble started when Rico got into drugs and alcohol. In high school, he refused to even try it when his friends offered, saying he could never because he's an athlete. But the more pressure he put on himself to succeed, the more he just started to crack before he finally gave in. Rico said, quote, "I was tired of everybody pressuring me. I was stressed out." Rico was suspended for 6 games for breaking team rules, including a time when he refused to attend a scheduled team meeting. Rico blamed the head coach, saying the coach didn't control his team properly. He was sidelined for 5 games due to a hip pointer, which is a contusion on the pelvis. After the season ended, Rico was no longer eligible to play for a college team, so he joined the International Basketball League, playing briefly for the San Diego Stingrays and St. Louis Storm. Rico tried to focus on his gameplay and decreased his drinking in the hopes of making his NBA dreams a reality. In the spring of 2000, Rico was invited to join the Harlem Globetrotters. He had a flair for trick shots, and his skills seemed perfectly suited for the team. But just 1 month after joining, he suffered an injury. While driving in South Los Angeles with some friends, the friends got into an argument with some people. Rico got out of the car to break up the fight. Someone hit him in the back of the head with a baseball bat.
Oof.
He didn't realize the injury was that bad and drove off. Soon he started having trouble with his balance. He started having intense headaches. A month later, Rico had to leave the Globetrotters. And at just 24, his dreams of making it to the NBA were over. And it's heartbreaking to think that he wanted to be in the NBA so badly, and not for the fame, but simply to create a better life for his mother. To say that he was devastated would be an understatement. Rico took the loss hard and went back to drinking. And despite his mother's hope that he would simply snap out of it, Rico spiraled further into a depression and started experimenting with crack, heroin, and methamphetamine. And this just kept escalating. And between 2001 and 2007, Rico would be arrested more than 100 times for trespassing, burglary, and mostly public intoxication. During one particular arrest, Rico saw his estranged father in lockup. It had been so long since they saw each other, his father didn't even recognize him.
Oh, wow.
Once again, it was a devastating blow to Rico, who, despite his father's lack of parenting, desperately wanted to impress his father.
Yeah. Well, that is not abnormal.
So around this time, Rico was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and given medication, but he soon stopped taking it because he didn't like how it made him feel. In 2007, shortly after his 30th birthday, Rico overdosed on prescription medication. It was the wake-up call he needed, and he soon entered a rehabilitation program in downtown LA. After finishing the program, Rico tried to get his life back on track and got a job working private security. He started helping his mother financially and was able to remain sober for the next 6 years. In early 2012, while working security at a club in Marina del Rey, Rico met Jennifer Song, an insurance broker from Seattle. A romance soon blossomed, but with both having lives in different cities, they had to settle for visiting each other on long weekends. The couple dated long distance for 2.5 years before Rico decided it was time to live in the same city. And since Jennifer owned a home and a business, it just made sense for Rico to go to her. So in September 2014, Rico started moving his things to Seattle. But the transition from LA to Seattle was difficult for Rico. A week into the move, and Rico still hadn't bothered to unpack any of his stuff. He later told Jennifer he felt insecure about not having a job, and he felt like it was her house, not his. And honestly, I completely understand. When I first moved in with my boyfriend, who is now my husband, I felt like I was living in his house. It was his house. But like after a certain amount of time, you would think that would go away. We started a family in that house and lived there for more than 8 years. But I just never got past the fact that it was his house because he chose it for himself, as opposed to one that we chose together.
Right.
I'm sure there's like a psychologist hat red flag there, but my point is I completely understand the feeling of living with someone, but feeling like it's not your house and you don't really live there kind of thing. Like I fully kind of get that. In early October, Rico took a weekend position selling timeshares. He'd done so well that the company arranged an interview for him on October 10th to discuss a full-time position. Rico was so relieved that he finally started to unpack at home. The couple started talking about marriage, and everything seemed headed in the right direction. On Thursday, October 9th, Rico was back at his mother's house in Alhambra, picking up the last of his stuff. He took his brother Tito out for dinner and bought him a new cell phone. His mother thought that Rico would spend the night before heading out the next morning, but Rico had a job interview the next day, so he left LA County sometime between 9 p.m. and midnight. There are conflicting reports about the times, which is incredibly frustrating, but I'm doing my best with the information available.
Yeah.
The trip from Alhambra, California to Seattle, Washington is approximately 1,140 miles or 1,834 kilometers, which would take roughly 18 hours, depending on your speed. The I-5 is the most direct route. So Jennifer calls around midnight, thinking Rico would still be at his mother's, but she was surprised to hear he was on the road. They spoke on the phone till about 3 a.m. Around 8 a.m., Jennifer woke up and called Rico again. He told her he was in the Sacramento area. She said he sounded tired. He told her he was going to go to the mountains to rest. Around this time, Rico stopped at a gas station in Lodi, California, which is about 37 miles or 59.8 kilometers south of Sacramento. Jennifer tried calling him again soon, but got no answer. Rico spoke with his mother on the phone around 9:30 a.m. And at 10:45 a.m., Rico sent Jennifer a text saying, "Sorry, I missed your call. Doing well, thinking of you." When Jennifer tried calling him back, the phone continued to ring. When Rico didn't show up at Jennifer's house at 7 p.m., she started to get concerned. She continually tried his phone over the next few days, but got no answer. On Monday, October 13th, during a routine inspection of a parking lot in Lower Site, a remote rest area in Cache Creek Regional Park, a Yolo County deputy sheriff sees a black Nissan Maxima. It's not parked in an allotted space, but rather off to the side. The deputy thinks nothing of it, but when he comes back to inspect the area the next day, he sees that same car is still parked there. So he decides to investigate. The deputy runs the plates and finds the car belongs to Rico Harris. So the Alhambra Police Department were contacted, who in turn spoke with Rico's mother, Margaret. Margaret then called Jennifer, and they filed a missing persons report. Just to give a clearer picture, the car was found at a rest area approximately 100 miles or 161 kilometers northeast of Lodi, where Rico got gas. It's about 700 miles or 1,126 kilometers south of Seattle. So it seems Rico got gas, then continued up the I-5, but shortly after Sacramento, around Woodland, he left the I-5 and started driving up Highway 16. We don't know if he possibly just got lost or if he intended to go that direction, even though it was out of his way. Last time he spoke with Jennifer, Rico said he was heading to the mountains to rest, and Highway 16 would have taken him closer to mountains. So it was a possible intended detour, but it was definitely out of his way. But since Rico had a job interview at some point on the Friday, it doesn't make sense he would drive 50 miles or 80 kilometers out of his way to go to a rest stop. And if he was going to rest, why did it matter if there were mountains around? I don't know.
Yeah.
The lead detective on the case, Dean Nyland, had cell towers ping for Rico's phone, and it was found to be in the Redwood Valley area, which is 70 miles or 112 kilometers away. So Nyland gets the phone number for everyone who lived in the area, and he called every single person until he found someone who had Rico's phone. A man said he was driving with his wife and their grandson on Sunday, October 12th, when they spotted a backpack against a white marker on the road. They stopped and looked through it, but couldn't find any identifying information. And when they searched the area, they couldn't see anyone. So they took the bag home with the plan of giving it to authorities. Inside the backpack was Rico's phone, a few pieces of clothing, an energy drink, and a set of jumper cables, which were normally kept in the trunk. And since Rico was away from the vehicle, carrying the cables around wouldn't make sense. Rico's phone battery was also dead. Jennifer said Rico carried that backpack around like it was a purse. So if he left the bag behind, she feels it was seriously wrong. Police went through the phone and checked every call that Rico made, read through hundreds of texts. They checked every cell tower that his phone interacted with. The last call was found to be the one he made to his mother, Margaret, at 9:30 on October 10th. A search of the area was conducted throughout the canyons within like a 5-10 mile, I think, radius of the rest area. And they went 27 miles or 43 kilometers along Highway 16. Searchers used all-terrain vehicles, search dogs, and even used a California Highway Patrol airplane that was equipped with a heat-seeking camera. They searched through farms in the area, but there was no sign of Rico anywhere. Cadaver dogs were brought to the site, and one kind of favored a deeper pool along Cache River. But when divers were brought in, they found nothing. 4 days into the search, a set of very large footprints were found in the sand by Cache Creek around noon. The footprints went from the parking lot where Rico's car had been found down to the creek. The prints were consistent with Rico's size 18 feet. There were also size 18 insoles found in the area. But those footprints weren't there in that area when it was searched the day before. It should also be noted there was no indication of any struggle anywhere. And the thing I find really interesting is that on Sunday, October 19th, just over a week after his disappearance, a witness claimed to have seen a rather tall individual wearing clothes consistent with what Rico was last seen wearing. He was seen at 5:30 a.m. near Lower Site, where his car was. Did Rico get picked up earlier and then go back later for his car? Is it possible that Rico was still in the area more than a week later? And if so, what had he been doing for food? At this point, the only money he had was a credit card, and there had been no activity on that. Is it possible he got picked up and went back to try and find his backpack? If so, who is giving him all of these rides? Did he wander off and get lost and somehow then doubled back a week later, and that's how the footprints magically appeared? But then how did he survive out in the woods for over a week? And remember, Rico is 6'9", so you would think that at least someone in the area would have noticed him wandering around. A missing person alert was sent out to every cell phone registered in Yolo County, and police received numerous tips about sightings. One witness saw a man matching Rico's description sitting on a guardrail around 5:30 a.m. on October 11th, in the area near where the backpack was allegedly found. Another man saw a man wearing light-colored pants, similar to what Rico was last seen wearing, walking southbound on Highway 16 around 8 a.m. that same day. A third sighting, a couple at Lower Site, saw a man matching Rico's description walking around a black car on Sunday morning. They said he seemed confused. 3 separate witnesses claimed to have seen Rico in Redwood Valley, which is 70 miles or 113 kilometers northeast of where his car was found. Did he walk there? Did he possibly hitchhike? Due to his incredible height, it's unlikely he could have been mistaken for someone else. But of course, we can't rule that out either. But let's talk about his car for a moment. The deputy said the car appeared as though it had been ransacked. There were papers and CDs scattered throughout the car, which makes sense because police found videos on Rico's phone of Rico just sitting in his car, singing along to music, playing with the visor. There were videos of him ripping up paper from the glove box, him casually tossing CDs into the passenger seat. It appeared as though Rico didn't realize he was being filmed as the camera was pointed up at the dome light. The videos were all time-stamped the evening of October 10th, which is the day, the last day anyone had heard from him. There were also photos on the phone of the creek and some selfies, including one of Rico standing in front of a "Welcome to Yolo County" sign. Also found in the car were 2 plastic bottles, one of which was empty, the other was mostly full. Both were believed to contain some sort of hard liquor. Rico's wallet was in the car, but his ID and 1 credit card was missing. A Discover card was missing, but no charges had been made on it since he disappeared. His phone and driver's license were also missing from the car. The car was also out of gas and the battery was dead. So you know I have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Did he leave his backpack on the road and he wanted to go down to the creek to get some water And then he came up a different way and then got confused and couldn't find his backpack. Did someone pick him up and while he was sitting around the backpack and then he accidentally left it behind? I don't know if we're ever going to find the answers we want, but I want to take a closer look at the days prior to his disappearance.
Yes. I would like that as well.
I thought you might.
Yes.
So in September, Rico started to move his stuff to Seattle. And while the transition was difficult, Jennifer said she felt that something was off. Rico was quieter than usual, and his bedroom at home was a disaster. When Jennifer confronted Rico, he admitted he had relapsed back in July, but swore to her it was a one-time thing. Rico's friends said that Rico told them he had been struggling and that he'd started drinking again. Some claim that Rico's drinking got him fired from his security job, and that was the push he used to move to Seattle. I could not officially confirm that.
Right.
On Wednesday, October 8th, there was a slight tension between Rico and Jennifer. He'd been in Seattle for a few weeks, and everywhere he went, they went together. So he wanted to go explore the city by himself. At some point during this exploration, he went to the gym. When Jennifer arrived home at 8 p.m., she was surprised to see that Rico wasn't there. So she texted him. When he texted back, he surprised her again by saying he was currently driving through Oregon on his way back home to Alhambra. The plan was to get the rest of his stuff.
Right.
Around 2 p.m. the next day, Rico arrived at his mother's house, at which point he had been awake for roughly 30 hours. He then took his brother to dinner, bought him a phone, and they hung out at their mother's house. Margaret said she last saw Rico around 10:30 p.m. She said Rico didn't sleep the entire time he was in town. So when she spoke with Jennifer on the phone when Rico spoke with Jennifer on the phone after leaving Alhambra, Rico had been awake for nearly 40 hours, which I think may have been a big factor in all of this.
Yeah.
Sleep deprivation can do awful things to your mind. According to Cedars-Sinai, symptoms of sleep deprivation include the inability to concentrate, memory problems, and drowsiness. Over time, it can lead to an increased risk of mental illness, depression, or even a stroke. It can cause hallucinations, mood swings. And remember, a couple claimed to have seen Rico near his car on the Sunday, and they said he looked confused. Is it possible that he still hadn't slept by that point? But then why did he stay in that specific area for 2 days? How long did he possibly stay awake? How long can a person stay awake? Well, according to Scientific American, in a monitored research setting, some subjects have remained awake for 8 to 10 days.
No.
In 1965, a 17-year-old named Randy Gardner stayed awake for 264 hours, which is about 11 days. But again, these are monitored and controlled studies. Scientific American also reports that in battle, some soldiers stayed awake for 4 days. And sometimes unmedicated patients with mania can go without sleep for 3 to 4 days. I don't think that Rico was dealing with mania. However, since none of us witnessed his behavior in the days leading up to his disappearance, we can't say for sure.
Right.
But sleep deprivation is a powerful thing. It's used as a form of torture for a reason. But when you combine the lack of sleep with the potential consumption of alcohol that was found in his car, it feels like a dangerous combination. And does the untreated bipolar factor in there somewhere? I don't know. But would all of this make him wander off far enough he couldn't be found in any of these searches? Detectives wondered if drugs were involved somehow, as his car was parked off to the side, like he was trying to hide or something. Detective Nyland claimed to have found a bindle in Rico's car, which is associated with drugs. However, the bindle was tested. There was no drug residue found. There was no drug paraphernalia in the car at all. We, of course, can't say for sure or not, but it seems like drugs was not a factor. But I just feel like there's something about that lack of sleep that might have messed with his mental state. It's also possible he walked away voluntarily. We spoke about it on the Kristen Modafferi episode, specifically involving Lucy Ann Johnson. Quick refresher, Lucy was found more than 50 years after she went missing. It turns out she escaped her abusive husband and started a new life somewhere else. So it happens. I don't think it happens that often, but I mean, it happens.
Yes.
Rico had told a friend his reason for moving to Seattle was, quote, "I'm ashamed of the things that happened down here, and I want to start another life." We assume he meant in Seattle with Jennifer. Is it possible he was on his way there that final time and he decided he just couldn't face it and went somewhere else? In the grand scheme of anything is possible, yes, but he didn't take any money or clothing with him. I'd be more likely to believe it if he had at least taken his backpack or clothes, or if he had taken out a very large sum of cash prior to the trip. Rico was also very close with his mother, and it seems unlikely he'd just leave her hanging like this, but maybe it's possible he left and after a while was simply too embarrassed to admit that he had voluntarily walked away in like a, I made my bed, now I lie in it kind of situation. But in a case where we don't have answers, we need to look at every single possibility. One more thing, because I know Lauren may have picked up on it as she has in past episodes. The missing persons report was filed 4 days after Rico officially went missing.
Yep.
Why did it take so long? Well, friends and family admitted Rico was known for disappearing for like 4 or 5 days at a time. They said he loved to go driving to clear his head, and he would just drive through Arizona or Nevada just on the spur of the moment whenever he needed to. Is it possible the car ran out of gas, so he decided to walk to continue clearing his mind, and he ended up getting lost? Thanks to the cell phone videos, we know that Rico was alive and in his car on the night of October 10th. He hadn't spoken with anyone since a 9:30 a.m. call to his mother and a 10:45 a.m. text to Jennifer. But he was making those videos later that night, whether he knew it or not. Is it possible after the text, he fell asleep because he'd been up for days at that point? Maybe he slept most of the day, and when he woke up, he was disoriented, and maybe he left the car to use the bathroom and got lost on his way back. And by the time he got to the parking lot days later, his car had been towed by police. Or maybe he woke up, realized he missed the job interview, and then just couldn't handle the idea of returning to Seattle without a job prospect. He was also several miles from a gas station, and his tank was empty and his battery was dead, so he would have needed a ride. Did he get picked up by the wrong person? Did he go to a nearby farm to ask for help and was greeted by the wrong person? On a Patreon episode not too long ago, I think, I talked about Ray and Faye Copeland, who were convicted of killing 5 men they hired as farmhands. The men would work for the Copelands for a while and then just disappear, and later investigators found the men's remains buried on the Copelands farm. I'm not suggesting the Copelands were involved, of course, because they were in Missouri and they were long dead before Rico ever went missing. My point here is, if you're stranded in the middle of nowhere and you go to the nearest house for help, you have no idea who those homeowners are or what they're capable of. Are most likely they going to turn out to be good, decent people? Of course. But again, we're talking a mystery where we have to explore every possible avenue. There are just so many possibilities, and the thought of what this must be doing to his family is devastating. It's sad that a man who worked through so many hardships and was finally getting a fresh start ended up as a mystery. As of May 2022, Rico Harris has not been found. Rico was described as a gentle giant who was driven to succeed. He was loyal, down to earth, and very positive. He wanted to help others and was loving and charismatic. He was just 37 years old at the time of his disappearance.
Wow.
I mean, this one's really a head scratcher. I feel like there's so little to go on. It's like, what do we even,
I know.
it's so sad. But listen, just because there's little to go on does not mean we aren't going to speculate. So go have a drink, hit the can, and we're going to be right back with more on this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. All right. Clap 2.
Yep.
Coming at you. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. Before the break, Christy was telling us all about the unsolved case of Rico Harris's disappearance. And Christy, what was I thinking? I forgot to ask you what you were drinking. I got to tell you, over here, my house is really warm. So on the break, I got a Rainbow Twist Pombe. It's ice cold. It's exactly what I want right now. And I know I was asking you, and then I filled in my own answer, but I'm dopey from the heat. It's very warm in this house.
No, God, I'm so sorry. I'm doing the classic water and a classic Slurpee from 7-Eleven. Thank heaven.
Thank heaven. 7-Eleven.
Again, for real, 7-Eleven. I'm on a first name basis with people, employees at one of the locations here because I frequent it so much. Just so often that a customer ahead of me in line will get a have a good night, and I get a see ya, because they know they literally will. Like the tone changes. It's a more like we get each other. We get how this works. It's just, yeah, I have a rapport with the majority of the employees there. They are never surprised to see me. So all I'm saying is 7-Eleven. Shoot me like a coupon code.
Give her a couple coops. Come on.
The amount of money I've paid at that store. Come on.
Yeah. Now, listen, we're going to do things a little bit differently right now. I'm going to give you my thoughts on the Rico Harris case, and then we're going to move on to the next case because we felt like that was the way to keep this all succinct. Now, I find this one really intriguing because, as we know, there's not a lot of information we have here. So I'm going to kind of talk again in very broad terms. We're obviously speculating. I have absolutely no actual anything to go on. It's just, again, this is what we do on this show, right? So
of course,
to me, I think there's a few things to talk about. We know he had a violent father in his childhood, that that Rico was specifically treated even the most, he was the brunt of his father's anger the most.
Yes.
We know that he had a dream to be in the NBA. He was on his way, and then he had this head injury, which unfortunately did cause that dream to end. That's a huge thing at age 24. For someone to go through. We know that that's when he started using more drugs, started drinking more. The moment of going into jail and seeing your own father, and it have been so long since you've seen your father that your father didn't recognize you, is one of the most heartbreaking things I think I've ever heard. And we know that he was, we know that when he was still playing basketball, he was drinking, he was doing speed to do these long kind of practices. But this is when things really kind of kicked up a notch, and I don't blame that. But I have something controversial to say. I am not a medical doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I am only speculating, and I preface this by saying I could be dead wrong. But I'm curious about his bipolar diagnosis.
Sure.
Because given everything, and it could be that he was bipolar, and that could be his thing. However, knowing what we know about his traumatic childhood, and knowing that he had drug and alcohol use issues, knowing that he had this trauma, this head trauma, and then knowing that he had this extremely, in my opinion, given all of the history, given that he had reached out to his father turned him down, and then he saw him physically and his father didn't even recognize him.
Oh, I know.
We're talking about such a large level of trauma. I am curious if what he was actually suffering from was a combination of potentially a few things, but severe depression, or honestly PTSD, and complex PTSD.
Sure.
Complex PTSD being something that is, PTSD often, I'm not an expert. I'm using very general terms, and forgive me if I say something that's not 100% correct, but from what I understand, PTSD is usually connected to a traumatic incident, a car
Yeah.
accident, someone who goes through, something at an incident at war, etc. Complex PTSD is children who go through years of abuse, living with an abusive
Sure.
parent.
Oh, yeah.
It just feels to me like I'm curious if he was on the right medications is honestly part of my question, because then we know that he did have that OD on prescription meds, but then he went into treatment and he got his life back together. And again, we don't know a lot of the details about what that looked like and was he continuing to be on medication or not. But I just am very curious about, obviously, as we know, I talk about it so often on this show about like brain chemistry, about the brain chemistry of,
Sure.
he's not a killer, but I'm saying of killers and stuff. I don't know. That just stuck out to me that I was like, I don't know if we know this man's full story, because there's so much that's happened to him that was so traumatic, both
Oh,
both emotionally, but also physically. You get hit in the back of the head that hard. That's also like, that's a huge physical trauma. I mean, again, it changed his entire life. So not only are you dealing with the implications of the physical injury you've had, but the emotions tied to that physical injury that you've had that have also killed your dream on top of everything else, the expectations his mother had of him. I just don't know that it was bipolar. And it's no shade. Again, I'm not suggesting that anything is better or worse than anything else. I'm just saying I think he may have been misdiagnosed, and he may have potentially been on incorrect medications, or maybe something that was not working in the way that it was intended to. This is just
sure.
a theory that I'm working on. Go with me. I think it's also interesting that he was dating Jennifer long distance. He was comfortable being at a distance from his partner, which is an interesting thing to note as well. Then, of course, after 2 years, she's got, she's laid down roots. She's got a business. She's got a house. It does make sense that he would move there. But then it also makes sense that he's like, I need alone time, given what we know, or again, the kind of like picture I feel like we're painting about where he may have been internally.
Right.
No one will ever know, of course, but we're just trying to make sense of this because it feels so confounding. It's interesting to me that, again, he would not unpack until he got this job. And then when he was given the interview for the job to become full-time, he was like, okay, I can unpack. It was like he really needed to feel like he was a contributing part of that household. He really needed
Right.
to feel like, and then what's interesting to me about that is then he kind of just it feels spontaneously, according to Jennifer, picks up and drives 18 hours home to LA to get the rest of his stuff right before he has an interview.
Yeah.
It feels, it could be that it was just that was on his mind and he wanted to get it done. I don't know. It also feels to me like a little bit, and I say this from a place of love, it feels like it may have also been a little bit of a self-sabotage. I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Sure.
But again, we know that he never made it back. So it's interesting again that his backpack had his cell phone with the battery is dead, clothes, energy drink, jumper cables. The jumper cables are interesting to me.
Yeah.
Why? Why the jumper cables, And the fact that he was out of gas and his battery was dead. Is that just bad luck? I mean, maybe it feels like that's the most logic about that does feel like maybe it was just bad luck, but I don't know. There's just something about it that doesn't add up to me. The fact that there was his footprints, which that's pretty hard. I mean, a size 18 foot,
Yeah.
it's pretty safe to say those were his footprints. I think we
Yeah.
can pretty much, it's a speculation, but you know what I'm saying. But they weren't there the day before when police were looking. So
Right.
that's interesting to me. There's so many layers to this. To your point, is he being driven around? Did he survive in the woods for a week when it feels like he had a few things? Obviously, he had taken some energy drinks and whatnot, but did he have supplies to last for a week in the woods? He's a big guy. I mean, you're not going to be able to survive on, a few Powerades. Like, I'm not being glib. I'm being honest. Like, I feel
Oh,
like,
yeah. Yeah. I have.
it's interesting again. Like, well, how did that work? Witnesses said they saw someone that looked like him in Redwood Valley. Again, it's like, and then the fact that the car appeared ransacked. There's the videos on his phone of him, but that it looks like he was accidentally filming himself potentially. Is it possible, to me, another question I have to ask, is it possible he was waiting to meet somebody? Is it possible,
Sure.
you know, he went home to saw his mom? Again, I think it's incredibly sweet that he bought his brother a cell phone, like took his brother out. Like that really speaks obviously to who this person
Sure.
was. Is it possible again that, he talked about how he really wanted to get into the NBA to take care of his mother? Is it possible there was all this pressure, as you said, he put on himself, potentially, feeling like he's got to get back. He's got to go to this interview. Like I said, this is somebody who has been through a lot in his life. My goodness. Is it possible that it's his instinct to self-sabotage, which again is very common? It's not a judgment. Was he trying to buy drugs? Was he trying to just find a place to do some drugs? Did he just want to sleep? I don't know. It's interesting though that there was video of him filmed singing, like accidentally. Like, so it feels to me like that's like you're waiting, like you're killing time. And especially when you're in
Yeah.
the midst of an 18-hour drive, that doesn't feel typical. Is it possible that he was waiting and left the car running, if we know that the music is playing, and that's how he drained his own battery of the car?
I assume based on those videos that, yeah, he probably sat in the car and had the car on until he ran out of gas. And then he kept the battery or he kept the radio going until the battery died.
Right.
But I just feel like he had to have been in at least maybe decent frame of mind on the way there. If there was a selfie of himself in front of the sign, like that feels like he's in a good mood, in a positive place.
And listen, maybe that does speak to bipolar. Maybe I'm completely wrong on that. Maybe he was, and this speaks to, again, like he was not sleeping for days. Maybe there that could have been happening. But again, I don't know. It's something just doesn't add up to me.
Maybe he was meeting someone in Yolo County and that was him being like, hey, look, I'm there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That sounds possible to me. Again, is it possible that he walked away from this life and started a new one? Possible. I think it's difficult. I'm not trying to be funny, genuinely. I think it's difficult as a 6'9" individual to just blend in. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah.
Is it impossible? No. Is it easy? No.
And he also had no clothes except for what he had with him that we know of. No money that we know of, except for that credit card that he never used. So it's just like, what do you do if you just want to go start over? Blending in isn't going to be easy, but also, where the heck are you going to go?
Well, yeah. And yeah, I know. And I guess my last question, my last kind of thought, the thing that kind of stuck out to me, because you said it was like Northern California where his car was found, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yeah. Because it was it was like an hour north of Sacramento, I think.
Right. So either is still in California or into Washington, right?
He was in California, but
he was in California. Okay, yes. Great. So Northern California up there, I don't need to explain to people who have a familiarity with American geography, but for those who don't, this isn't a situation like we've talked about, like the Ryan Singleton episode where he was, potentially lost in a extremely hot place, right? Like that was right. That was a part of that.
Yeah,
right?
He was in the near Death Valley, I think.
Near Death Valley, which again gets upwards of like 120 Fahrenheit. Like it gets, that's one thing. But this feels like, I understand he was in, potentially a wooded area, etc. But what's interesting to me, two last thoughts. One is that the police used this plane with a heat sensing camera.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not trying to be, negative, but I'm assuming a heat sensing camera is not going to pick up a body, right?
Right.
So it's wonderful that they were using that technology. I commend them for taking the search seriously. But I feel like, is it possible that if they were going over the woods and he was somewhere in those woods, tragically having passed, they wouldn't have picked up on him that way.
Right.
I'm assuming. So I guess my next question was, did you try and look for him in any other way on foot or et cetera?
Yeah.
Now, maybe not. And you know what I'm saying? Like, again, like I just
Right.
always, we always suspect the detective work in these things.
Of course.
And then again, and then my next point was going to be too, like, it's just, yeah, I'm all over the place. I'm so sorry. It's so warm in this house, but I guess my bottom line is just, I feel like that's not a completely, and maybe I'm wrong that maybe a heat sensing camera can pick up a body, but I'm assuming not, right? Like
I assume it only picks up something with like
that's a lie.
a certain level of heat.
Right.
I would assume. So
I would assume that too. So there's that thought, again, very tragically, but also it just feels again like if this person, I don't know. It's not like it's again, that this is so sorry. I was like, I'll get back to what was my own thought? I got back there. It just took me a second. It's very warm. It's not like this is the high desert where decomposition and stuff can happen so much faster than you would ever imagine. Like Northern California, it's basically the same climate as, like Washington State. Like it's like Seattle, it's really, depending on the time of year, there's seasons. It's not like Southern California, which is the complete opposite, or like, where the desert is. So I only also wanted to offer that as just another thought where it's like, if he did sadly die, it's very interesting to me that then he was just never found, that he was somewhere that he would have been able to walk to potentially. It's also possible somebody picked him up, of course. But again, if he was somewhere he was able to walk to, because there was a witnesses that said they saw him walking around. Again, he's 6'9". This is a distinguishable person.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to me that there was never anything found and that there was no body found if he passed on, which then brings us back to the question, and I don't have an answer for it. Is it feasible he started a new life? And yeah, I mean, I guess anything is possible, but I mean, this one has me walking in circles. It really does. Cause there's just one thing that we're missing here. And I know I say that so often about cases, but I really feel it with this one where it's like, there's one detail we don't know. And I feel like if we knew that he was, we know he had relapsed around this time.
Yeah.
That feels to me like, my gut just goes to like, was he waiting for someone to buy drugs, and either it was somebody he wasn't familiar with and it was not the right person that you want to be involved with? Did something go wrong? Was it, somebody that was like, hey, come hang out with us, and he went and got mixed up in something that went wrong? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like there's that one extra piece that just doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up given all the specifics, the video of him singing, all of those things.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. There is something, and also like, again, if he just wandered from the vehicle because he was disoriented from lack of sleep or whatever it was, how has he not been found? Like, that's the other thing. Like, if he just wandered out in the elements, how has he not been found since? That to me is just like, especially tracks were found like 4 days into the search. So he was still wandering the area and they never saw him.
Yeah.
Like, again, this man was 6'9", 300 pounds. You're going to notice, like 6'9".
Yeah.
Like, I find it wild that people had those sightings and then someone had a sighting a week later and then just nothing. I don't get it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, listen, what's next? Are we getting into Bison Dele?
Well, we're not done being frustrating.
Oh, I'm sure of it.
We're going to get to a whole new, what? That's where we're at.
Okay.
So yeah, we're gonna talk Bison Dele. This one might get confusing because he did change his name at some point, as did someone else in this story. But I'm doing my best to it'll all make sense, I hope. So Eugene Geno Williams Jr. and Patricia Phillips had their first son, Kevin, in 1967. Soon after, they welcomed their second son, Brian Carson Williams, on April 6, 1969. In the 1970s, Geno performed with the R&B group The Platters, who you may know from their 1955 hit, The Great Pretender. Geno's family traveled the world with the band, but he separated from Patricia in 1970, and the couple later divorced. Patricia and her sons moved to Fresno, California, where Patricia later remarried. Patricia's new husband, Ron Baker, was allegedly known to be very verbally abusive to the boys, although Ron later claims that never happened. The couple broke up when Brian was in the 7th grade. In their youth, Kevin and Brian were highly intelligent and voracious readers. Kevin was said to have read through a set of World Book encyclopedias in the 3rd grade.
Wow.
Kevin was the more shy and socially awkward of the siblings, while Brian was more popular and had his father's musical inclination. Kevin grew to a staggering 6'8", but despite his desire to play sports, he was unable to play due to crippling asthma. At times, the asthma got so bad that Kevin had to take steroids for it, and on several occasions, he had to be taken to a hospital.
Oh my God.
Brian, on the other hand, was a natural athlete and excelled at track. But when he went through a growth spurt in the 10th grade, coaches at his high school insisted that Brian try out for the basketball team. And even though Brian didn't much care for the sport, he turned out to be a natural. And by the time he was a senior, he ended up being eyed by numerous colleges, which, if we can just talk about that for a second, imagine not playing a sport until the 10th grade. And then 2 years later, colleges are like, we'd like you to play for us. That's like, talk about natural talent.
Yeah.
So Brian spent his freshman year of college at the University of Maryland, where he won Rookie of the Year in the Atlantic Coast Conference. He then transferred to the University of Arizona, whose team is the Wildcats, as you may recall, from our mutually favorite cinematic masterpiece, Speed.
Mhm.
Shout out to Graham Yost for writing Speed and for creating the series Justified, which stars Blanche's beloved Timothy Oliphant. Graham Yost is from Etobicoke, Ontario.
I didn't know that.
Which feels nice to know that Speed was the work of a Canadian.
I like that a lot.
So Brian Williams, who stood at a very impressive 6'10", played for the Wildcats for 2 years before entering the NBA draft in 1991. He was chosen 10th overall by the Orlando Magic. And while Brian remained with the Magic for 2 years, he was incredibly unhappy in Florida. He was diagnosed with clinical depression and became one of the first NBA players to go public with mental health issues. During his struggle, he was in an accident in which his car hit a telephone pole, and he attempted to take his own life by overdosing on sleeping pills. Due to his health, Brian was removed from the active roster, and the next season was traded to the Denver Nuggets. 2 years later, Brian was traded to the Los Angeles Clippers for their 95-96 season, which ended up being his best season yet, averaging 15.8 points per game. But in his second season with the Clippers, Brian got into a contract dispute and spent most of his time on the bench before being released from the team with just 9 games left in the regular season. But lucky for Brian, he was quickly picked up by the Chicago Bulls.
Ooh.
And I know that everyone who grew up in North America in the 90s are familiar with the 90s Bulls. We're talking Michael Jordan. We're talking Scottie Pippen. We're talking Dennis Rodman. I mean, when I think of 90s sports, I immediately think of the Chicago Bulls, everyone owning either a shirt or jacket with the Charlotte Hornets logo on it for some reason.
Yep.
And the 1996 Atlanta Summer Olympics, although that one is for personal reasons.
Thank
and
you.
organically, that and Speed have come up twice in this episode, without me really thinking about it. So Brian joins the Bulls near the end of the season, a team that had won 72 games and the NBA championship the year before. The Bulls make it to the playoffs, and in the finals, they defeated the Utah Jazz in 6 games to win the 1997 NBA championship. After the win, Brian was traded to the Detroit Pistons and was given a 7-year, $45 million contract. In 1998, Brian decided to change his name to Bison Dele as a nod to his African-American and Cherokee heritage. So from here on out, I'm going to refer to Brian as Bison, as it is what he preferred. At the start of the 1999-2000 season, Bison was the highest paid player on the Pistons. But despite all of it, regardless as to the wins and the money and his natural talent, Brian just did not like playing basketball. And especially he disliked the NBA and how it operated. He once said he felt like, quote, an organ grinder's monkey. Bison's hope was just to save enough money to get out. At the age of 30, Bison chose to walk away from the NBA entirely and retired. He played his final game with Detroit on May 5th, 1999. By retiring, he walked out on the remaining 5 years of his contract, which meant losing out on more than $30 million. And to that, I say, kudos to him for ignoring the money and doing what makes him happy. Bison believed in not letting your job define who you are. Bison became an avid traveler. He ran with the Bulls in Pamplona. He backpacked through Europe. He biked across the United States. He went skydiving. He got his pilot's license. He learned how to sail. In late 2000, he decided to settle down in Tahiti. He bought a 55-foot catamaran for $650,000 and named it Hakuna Matata, which every 90s kid knows means no worries in Swahili. Mm-hmm. Shout out to the 1994 classic, The Lion King, and shout out to teen heartthrob Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Of course.
And shout out to Disney Adventure Magazine for keeping me in the know on what Jonathan Taylor Thomas was up to. The Hakuna Matata. That's
Hakuna Matata.
Yeah, I can't even say it's too hot in here. Jonathan Taylor Thomas has me tongue-tied.
Listen, I get it.
Oh my God. JTT, tongue-tied. Come on. I'm CTT at this point. I don't even know what I mean. It doesn't even matter. The Hakuna Matata was all kinds of luxurious. There were several bedrooms. It had a living area, a kitchen. There was a TV, beanbag chairs, and a full wraparound padded couch. Bison hired different captains and brought different friends, and they sailed the South Pacific, like Papua New Guinea, Australia, and the island of Vanuatu. And one of the friends that Bison brought with him on his journey was Serena Carlin. Serena Midnight Carlin was born April 4th, 1972. According to her mother, Gail, Serena got her middle name from the fact that during birth, Serena's head came out at 11:58 and her feet came out at 12:02. Serena's parents broke up a year later, and Serena was raised by Gail in Berkeley, California. While working in LA, Serena met the singer Prince at a nightclub. He invited Serena to his table and then out to his limo after for a tour of the town. They stayed in touch over the years, and later he hired her as his personal assistant during his European tour. But eventually, Serena tired of the lifestyle and returned to the United States, where she worked as a makeup artist on a movie set, and then moved to New York in 2001 to work for a realty business with a childhood friend. Bison was also hanging out with celebrities, as it is rumored he dated Madonna.
Oh, interesting.
Someone, a friend of his, was asked if the rumor was true, and the friend went, you know what? He found her dull. And for some reason, that made me laugh so hard. And I was like, Madonna? Dull? I don't think those two words have ever been in the same sentence before.
No.
Serena and Bison met through mutual friends in 1997. They were both invited to a concert, and Bison said the second he laid eyes on Serena, it was all over for him. One of the first things Serena asked him was, quote, "Have you ever been in a crowded room and felt like you were the only one there?" And that was the moment Bison believed he had met his soulmate. Serena was cautious about starting a relationship with Bison. An NBA player travels a lot, but there was a deep connection between them that she couldn't deny. They dated off and on for a few years before going their separate ways. After the September 11th terrorist attacks, Bison realized life was too short not to grab happiness at every opportunity, which brings me to a past discussion side note.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was talked about on this show or on Patreon.
It was
Okay.
Patreon.
Either way, we're getting in it. So I mentioned a celebrity couple, Paul Bettany and Jennifer Connelly, and how September 11th played into their love story. I believe I was incorrect in my telling of the events, so I have since Googled to confirm. My apologies for any previous misinformation. So Paul Bettany is a huge fan of Jennifer's, and anyone who grew up in the 80s and saw Labyrinth and career opportunities agrees. Jennifer Connelly is stunning.
Of course.
So Paul, super into her, but they don't meet until they film the 2001 movie, A Beautiful Mind. So they meet, but they're both dating other people at the time. They think nothing of it, but they become good friends. There's some sort of connection there. But after filming, Jennifer goes to New York, Paul goes to Tuscany. Paul saw the terrorist attacks on TV. He said in that moment, he realized he was in love with Jennifer and he didn't want to waste another moment. So he called her and said, "I know this is crazy. Let's just get married." At this point, they had not even dated yet. They got married 16 months later in Scotland and have been together ever since. They have 2 children together, plus one from a previous relationship. How fucking
were they
beautiful.
I mean, it's beautiful. Were they still with their old partners though at the time?
I don't know if they were with anybody,
That
but
might have been rough for those other two.
they don't find it as beautiful as we do. But they were both like, yeah, you're right. There was a connection, we can't deny it, and they've been married since 2003. So
wow.
Good God.
And when we were talking about that in the episode, I was like, I think you mean Nick Lachey and Jessica Simpson, who had split, and 9/11 brought them back together because they realized life was too short. But we all know how that turned out. So why do I even talk?
Look, I didn't even know if they were still together or not. But I was like, I felt like I was wrong in the moment because I could remember bits, but I couldn't remember the whole thing. This to me, damn. Like that way to swing and really go for it, man.
Yeah, man.
I can't imagine proposing to someone I've never dated.
Yeah.
And the fact that it worked out, or at least enough that they've been married for almost 20 years.
Yeah, a big swing.
Yeah.
Big swing.
Good on them both.
Yeah.
Oh, so thank you for indulging me.
Of course.
So Bison learns about the attacks and is inspired to reach out to Serena and invite her on his boat. She agrees to a visit. So she joined Bison for a 2-week trip on October 16th. But the trip soon turned into a 5-week trip, and Serena told her family she was having a great time. Serena reluctantly returned home to New York and her work responsibilities. Bison called Serena soon after to say he believed that they had a true connection, and he invited her to join him again, but this time not for a visit, but to outright live with him on the boat. Serena said it wasn't possible as she had bills to pay. Days later, Serena received a check in the mail from Bison for $50,000. I don't know if she accepted the money or not, but Serena did end up meeting Bison in New Zealand in January 2002. The plan was to do some island hopping. While in Auckland in February, Bison and Serena received a visitor. Bison's brother, Kevin, arrived on board despite not having been invited. At some point, Bison's older brother changed his name from Kevin Williams to Miles DeBoard. So from now on, I'm going to refer to Bison's brother as Miles. I don't know why they both did, but we'll get into Miles' name change later. When Miles showed up on the boat, the brothers had not spoken in 4 years. Miles claimed he wanted to repair their relationship and, quote, heal the bond. But Bison had a difficult relationship with his family. There was a lot of violence and anger in his youth, and his family had mostly written him off. But once Bison got drafted into the NBA, suddenly his family were interested in him again. But Bison often struggled with the feeling that he was in some way obligated to take care of his family. Is it a nice thing to do to help out when you can? Of course. But when they don't appreciate it or continue to hound you for money, it's just wrong. Wrong on their behalf, not wrong on his. Bison bought his mother a house and paid $80,000 to put her through college at UCLA. Wow. He gave Miles $50,000 on 2 separate occasions. But the story that bothers me the most is when Bison got his first bonus check from the NBA. He bought his estranged father a $15,000 Harley Davidson motorcycle, keeping in mind that his bonus check was for $25,000. So he spent more than half the check on this motorcycle for his dad. He presented it to his dad, who said, quote, son, next time, just give me the cash. Which is a whole new level of ungrateful that I can't deal with. Also, to that I say, Gino, Mr. Best known for being in the Platters 20 years after they had a hit, and he wasn't even so popular. He's not even listed on their Wikipedia page. So I just don't, people mistreating their own children in any fashion is, riles me. I'll say it.
Agreed.
Miles was constantly trying to get Bison to give him money for various get-rich-quick schemes. Friends of Bison's said that Miles would contact him every few months looking for money. Bison paid to put Miles through computer training, but nothing was ever enough for Miles. Serena was very welcoming to Miles at first. She believed that repairing a family relationship might be good for Bison, but Serena had good instincts and was soon uncomfortable with Miles's presence. He made her nervous, and soon his energy made Serena want to get off the boat entirely. It started causing a great strain on Serena's relationship with Bison. So after spending several weeks with Miles, Bison and Serena decided to fly to Tahiti. And sorry, I said several weeks. He was there for months. He showed up in February. They went to Tahiti May 29th. Yep.
Oh my word.
And he also hunted him down and showed up. They had in no way arranged him to come. So they just wanted alone time. They flew to Tahiti. The plan was Miles and the boat's captain would sail and meet up with them in 3 weeks' time. The couple spent much of their time on the island of Moorea, where they checked into a motel sometime around June 16th. When they all reunited, Bison and Serena said they were planning to hire a new captain and sail to Hawaii, but that they'd be going alone. Miles didn't seem bothered by being told to leave and asked if he could travel with them to Hawaii, as he had plans to meet his girlfriend there. Later, his girlfriend would tell police that Miles told her he was going to sail with them to Hawaii, then fly to California to be with her. Bison and Serena agreed to take Miles to Hawaii, and soon they hired Bertrand Saldo as their new captain and prepared to leave. On July 6, 2002, Hakuna Matata set sail for Hawaii with Bison, Serena, Miles, and Bertrand on board. Serena left a voicemail for her best friend, wishing her friend's son a happy birthday and saying she would call her when she got to the island and maybe the friend could join them there. Then 2 weeks go by and there's still no word. Not an email, not a phone call, nothing. Serena's friends start to get concerned. Over the 2 days after the boat had left, 4 phone calls were made from the boat. None were distress calls. On July 7th, Serena spoke with Kevin Porter, a friend and business manager of Bison's. She said, quote, "B wants to talk to you." And then the line went dead. Porter said he wasn't worried. That sort of thing happened all the time with satellite phones, but they never called him back. In fact, there was no word from Bison, Serena, or Miles for several weeks. 7 weeks go by. August 26th, Porter received a call about a suspicious transaction on Bison's account. Certified Mint, a Phoenix gold dealer, said a man claiming to be Bison Dele, who referred to himself specifically as Brian Williams, was interested in buying 460 one-ounce gold coins for just over $152,000. The man matched Bison's description and was carrying his passport and checkbook and had given Certified Mint a check for the full amount. Now, since it had been weeks with no contact and years since Bison had ever written a check, Kevin Porter knew that something was off. So he called one of the phone numbers that was written on the check. He got a voicemail which said, "Yo, this is B, leave a message," which is something Bison would say, but the thing is, it wasn't Bison's voice, it was Miles.
Oh, no.
Miles called Porter back and said, "Oh, yeah, he parted ways with Bison and Serena 4 or 5 months ago. He couldn't remember the last time he saw them or even the place." Police were contacted and a sting operation was set up. So when Miles went to pick up the gold at 4 p.m. on September 5th, he was met with 19 police officers instead. They interviewed him for hours, and Miles claimed that Bison and Serena were held captive by Polynesian pirates and that the gold was to be used for their ransom. He said they were alive when he left. Police didn't buy the story, but also didn't have enough evidence to hold him any longer, so Miles was released. There is footage of part of his interview, and the moment he's released, he is grinning from ear to ear. It may just be nerves, it may be relief, it may be nothing, but it's off-putting to see someone smile so much for potentially lying to the police.
Yeah, well, especially if the reality is that your brother and his girlfriend, whether they're official or not,
Yeah.
if they're being held legitimately hostage and your job is to go get the ransom coins,
Yep.
yeah, it feels atypical.
Right? So September 8th, Miles' girlfriend, Erica Weiss, dropped Miles off at the border and he heads to Tijuana, Mexico. The next day, Erica goes to the police and says that Miles confessed to her what actually happened on the boat. According to Erica, Miles said that he got into a heated argument with Bison and Serena tried to break up the fight, but was shoved back and she fell and broke her neck on the side of the boat. Miles then claims that Bertrand came up from below to see what the noise was about. And when he saw that Serena was dead, Bertrand said they needed to return to port and report her death to the authorities. Bison allegedly refused and beat Bertrand to death with a wrench. Miles said he feared for his life, so he pulled out a gun and shot Bison. Miles said he was worried that no one would believe his story, so he tied weights to the bodies and tossed them overboard.
I'm so sorry. I'm so shocked. I'm so sorry.
Nope.
Very quickly,
Yep.
Did you say that Miles says he shot Bison?
Miles says he shot Bison in self-defense because Bison had killed everybody else. But yes.
I honestly thought I misheard you, which was like, I have to ask for clarification, but I didn't.
Nope.
Please continue.
Yep. The FBI discovered that prior to the trip, Miles had bought $200 worth of weights at the Rebel Sports Store in Auckland. Miles allegedly visited the store multiple times. The first time with Bison, Miles returned on his own to buy the weights. The staff described him as friendly and polite. So they were out on the water for weeks. Did they want the weights to work out? Or were the weights a clue that these murders were premeditated? On September 11th, while in Mexico, Miles called his mother, Patricia, who he hadn't spoken to in 2 years, and asked her if she loved him. He then said, quote, "Mom, you know me. I could not survive prison." Police found the hotel room where Miles was hiding out and found clothing and items that belonged to him, but Miles was gone. The next day, police issued a warrant for Miles' arrest. On September 13th, Miles called his mother again, telling her, quote, "I swear to God, I didn't do this." Also on September 13th, more than 9 weeks after it was last seen, the catamaran Hakuna Matata was found docked at a private slip in the town of Taravo. It had been repainted, and the name had been changed to Arabella. A team of investigators, including members of the French police and the FBI, conducted a 90-minute search of the vessel. No one was found on board.
Wow.
Authorities claim that there was evidence that holes had been repaired, but they couldn't verify if they were bullet holes or from the boat scraping coral. There were potentially traces of what appeared to be blood found both inside and outside the boat, but police said it needed to be taken to a lab for verification. As far as I can tell, that verification has never been made public. It's been 20 years. A local fisherman claims he saw the boat hit some rocks on the eastern coast of Tahiti on July 13th, and that the boat remained there for 3 days. The manager of a gas station in the area said, quote, "A large man came to the station and wanted to repair his boat. He was directed to Taravo Marina, where the boat was found 2 months later." Miles was seen docking the boat at the marina on July 16th before leaving the country days later. On July 19th, Miles flew from Tahiti to Los Angeles, where he spent a week with his girlfriend, Erica Weiss. There is no word as to what Miles did between then and the gold deal. On September 13th, a man was found unconscious on a beach and taken to an emergency room. After spending 2 days in a coma, the man was fingerprinted and discovered to be Miles DeBoard. At 11:30 a.m. on September 15th, Miles was transferred to Scripps Memorial Hospital in the San Diego area. His pupils were non-responsive and he had no reflexes. Miles was removed from life support on September 26th and pronounced dead the following day.
Whoa.
Cause of death was an intentional overdose of insulin. Miles was just 35 at the time of his death. As of May 2022, Bison Dele, Serena Carlin, and Bertrand Seldo have never been found. Bison Dele was described as extremely intelligent, articulate, and soulful. He was an adventurer at heart. Serena Carlin was described as poetic, philosophical, and kind. She was loving with both inner and outer beauty. Unfortunately, I could not find anything on Bertrand Seldo. I read he was born in France and that he was a very accomplished sailor and a seasoned captain. At the time of their disappearances, Bison was 33, Serena was 30, and Bertrand was 32. The complete waste of life in this whole episode is incredibly heavy when you lay it out like that everybody in this episode was in their 30s at the time.
So
which
young.
is
My God.
So as far as theories go, I don't think that Bison, Serena, and Bertrand are living their best lives somewhere without contacting their families. So as sad as it is to say, I think it is most likely that all three were killed. Miles says their boat was boarded by pirates and that pirates were holding Bison and Serena hostage. So Miles had to get the gold coins to pay the ransom. And I get that pirates are a real thing. According to progressive policy, there were 125 high seas pirate attacks in 2021, which feels high to me, but somehow the number is the lowest it's been in years. For example, in 2020, there were 195 pirate attacks. In 2010, there were 445 attacks. In 2002, when they were on the boat, when this would have occurred, the number of attacks was close to 400. And in 2000, the number was nearly 500. So at the time that this was going on, the idea of a pirate attack is not out of the realm of possibility. But if it was a pirate attack, why did they send Miles to get the money, knowing that he'd have to impersonate Bison, when they could have outright sent Bison, who would care so much more about Serena's safety and be much more likely to return with the money than Miles would? Is it possible the pirate story was just a story and that Miles killed his brother in a rage? It's possible, and that's what I think happened.
Yeah.
Miles told his girlfriend Erica that Serena's death was an accident and that Bison killed Bertrand and Miles killed Bison in self-defense. Then Miles claimed he attached the weights to the bodies and dumped them in the ocean. And to that I say, if you're truly innocent, then why'd you dispose of the bodies? And if you were innocent, why did you use Bison's money to buy a ton of gold coins? And if you were really there to heal the bond between you and your brother, why'd you bring a gun on board? Miles said they got into a heated argument. Did Miles ask for money and Bison said no? Did Miles not take it well when Bison said they're going their separate ways when they get to Hawaii? Either way, I think Miles was terribly jealous of his younger brother. Miles attended college but dropped out partway through. Bison went to college and was drafted into the NBA. Miles wanted to play sports but was unable to because of asthma. Bison played professionally for 8 years and hated it. That's got to be a sting. I could see Miles being angry that his little brother was living the dream, even though he didn't even like basketball. Miles was described as someone with a chip on their shoulder, so maybe he resented Bison for having the life that Miles always wanted. I'm also curious to know why Miles changed his name, because I think it would be very telling. Did he change it before Bison changed his, or did he change it after because Bison changed his? And why specifically the name Bison or Miles DeBoard? Bison changed his to honor his heritage. Miles said he chose DeBoard in honor of a relative on his mother's side. And he chose the name Miles after Miles Davis. Why? I honestly could not find out why, but I find it interesting he chose to name himself after a very famous musician when it was Bison, not Miles, who was musically gifted and played multiple instruments. Miles spiraled into alcoholism, which caused him to fall into a deep depression. Bison experienced depression as well, but got out of it and was living a full, happy life, whereas Miles was broke and several months behind on rent when he tracked down Bison and forced himself into Bison's life. He also spent months living off of Bison on the boat and then couldn't handle it when Bison finally told him it was time to go. The brothers looked a lot alike, so it seemed as though Miles was willing to just take over his brother's life. How long would he have gone on pretending to be Bison if the bank hadn't flagged it? We know Miles is guilty of fraud, but is he also guilty of murder? His mother, Patricia Phillips, believes the pirate kidnapping is the most plausible story. She said, quote, "This is not a Cain and Abel story. Brian was not a saint, and Miles was not the monster he's made out to be." And I find it incredibly interesting and maybe a little telling that their mother referred to Miles by his new name, but referred to Bison by his old name.
Yeah.
Does that mean she didn't approve of his name change, or that they just legit never spoke and she just didn't, she only thinks of him from the past because they don't speak now? I don't know. Either way, I think we can all agree that Miles is the reason that Bison, Serena, and Bertrand haven't been seen in 20 years. And what turns my stomach in this whole case is, assuming that the killer was Miles, how did he do it? Did he actually shoot them before dumping them overboard? Or worse, did he force them off the boat at gunpoint and leave them stranded in the middle of the ocean? It's horrific to think about. There are so many things about this case that I find heartbreaking. The fact that Serena and Bertrand were just innocent bystanders in all of this. Bison was also an innocent bystander. How Bison was just trying to live his life, and Miles was angry because he felt Bison owed him something simply because they were related. And I may get a lot of hate for saying this, but just so you know, blood relative or not, if the person is toxic and does nothing but take things from you, it's okay to remove that person from your life. Being related doesn't mean you owe that person anything. It's not Bison's fault that he was naturally talented, and it wasn't his fault that Miles was unable to play at all. But if Miles had something to do with the 3 deaths, I find it heartbreaking to think that their mother held a joint funeral for them. The idea of a potential killer and one of his victims being memorialized together irks me in a way that I can't fully describe. Now, I know that some may wonder why I put Rico and Bison's cases together for an episode. For one, there wasn't enough information for each case to do a full 2+ hour episode. And I wanted these stories to be told, so I felt like this was the right way to do it. Also, there are a lot of similarities in the case. Both are African-American men in their 30s. Rico was 6'9", Bison was 6'10". They both had a natural athletic ability. They both grew up without a father figure. They both took on the role providing for their families. They both played basketball on like a semi-professional or professional level. And there's also, sadly, the fact that they both have not been seen since they disappeared. But one thing I find a very weird kind of coincidence is that both men had a very significant year in 1997. Rico, in 1997, won the state championship with LA County College. For Bison, he won the NBA championship with the Bulls in 1997. It just feels like their top moment career-wise was both in the same year is just a weird coincidence, especially when it's something I did not know about prior to deciding to put these 2 cases together. So, in a fitting ending, I think the Reverend who spoke at Bison and Miles' memorial service put it best when he said, quote, "The fact of the matter is, only God knows the truth. And it's not the not knowing that will just continue to haunt me." Reporting for True Crime and Cocktails, I'm Christy Oxborrow.
Wow. I've got a lot of thoughts.
Mhm.
First of all, I just have to say this, Natalie Wood vibes.
Right? Yeah.
The whole time I was like, this is fascinating to me. Obviously very different people, very different situation, but in many ways very similar in so many ways. Oh gosh, I've got lots of thoughts. So let's take one more quick break, grab one more drink, hit the can again, and we're going to be right back to wrap it up on this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. All right, last clap. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, talking currently the case of Bison Dele. Okay, I've got so many thoughts. I'm going to try and get through them quickly. So interesting, like you were saying, the kind of similarities between these 2 cases, even though it doesn't feel like they're directly related, obviously.
Right.
There is just so much that kind of is similar between the 2 of them, which is really interesting to me. One of the things is, Lauren has a modicum of information about the NBA side note.
Hey.
So he got picked up by the Chicago Bulls and then won that season.
Yes.
And then immediately went to the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah.
One thing I learned from The Last Dance, the Chicago Bulls documentary that came out during the pandemic.
Right, that I was told to watch and never got around to.
It's very good. But
I
one of the
bet.
things that I learned was that Chicago Bulls and Detroit were arch bitter rivals at that time.
Interesting.
So it's very interesting to me again that, you know, he came in late in that season, won the championship, and then was like, peace out. Like, I'm curious about how his Chicago teammates felt about that, is my point.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, $45 million contract also, I feel like, is nothing to sneeze at that time.
No.
I love that he was like, he didn't want to do it. He just didn't like it. And he was like, I don't want to let my job define who I am. To quote the immortal Carrie Bradshaw, if I may,
Please.
when Miranda said, you have to write your column, that's who you are, Carrie responded, it's not who I am, it's what I do. And I think that that is very brilliant and true. And I think it's very easy for us as humans to become defined by what we do. I think that that's our nature. But I think at the end of the day, it's not. The two things are not the same thing. And so I really was actually quite inspired by his story. It's very sad, obviously, that it has such a tragic ending. But I was quite inspired that he was like, you know what? This really doesn't bring me joy. I really don't like it. I'm going to take the money that I have. I'm going to leave this mass amount of money that I could have had. I'm going to travel the world and get a pilot's license and do all these things and buy a boat. Like, I think that's just, you know, obviously very few people have the opportunity to have that amount of money to have that freedom. But I was inspired mostly by saying, I'm going to do the thing that brings me joy. I think that that's rare in life, and we could all use a little bit more joy in our lives. And I thought that was a beautiful thing. I liked Serena Carlin. I liked this middle name story. I thought was quite charming, that it was like she was in the process of giving birth, but she held out and then she waited. You know, it was like she wanted to be born the next day.
Yeah.
Maybe she was on the cusp of a new astrological sign, a new moon or something. Exactly.
Yeah.
I also love the story about meeting Prince and then becoming his PA and all of the above. Also just want to give a shout out, you know, dear listeners, we so appreciate all of you. And what we appreciate, like, there's been, we get these influxes of fan art. And recently there's always very graciously, some of you will tag us in things or email us in things. And I think we received one recently, and it's Pedro Pascal and I, because I didn't realize this. I posted a photo wearing a Purple Rain shirt. It's vintage. I was very excited. It's from that time. It's very tattered, but I got this vintage shirt online, original Purple Rain shirt. And he, of course, was photographed in a Purple Rain shirt, which I'm sure he has been many times, because I think he's talked about his love of Prince. Anyway, point being, someone has photoshopped us together. And listen, is it the best Photoshop job? No. And I say that with love, because it doesn't need to be. I like the spirit of it, that it was like, look at these two souls that have something that they like in common. Anyway, that's what Prince made me think of. It was on my mind, so I had to bring it up.
Of course.
The dating Madonna rumor is also very interesting, because now, don't quote me on dates, I might not be right, but around that time, she was, of course, dating Dennis Rodman of the Chicago Bulls. So I'm curious, is it possible that, you know, they did date? He had met her through Dennis, but there's also a whole thing. I feel like you would actually really like The Last Dance, because it is about the basketball and it's about all that story, but there is also the side stuff about like the Dennis Rodman of it all, who like just one day decided not going to come in for a bit, going to just go off for a while. You know, and he was with Madonna, I believe, around that time. Anyway, I could be getting my timelines mixed up. Forgive me. It's 80 degrees in my home currently, and I'm doing the best I can.
You're doing great.
Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Also, that she was too boring. I was like, well, I don't know about that. I mean, she was dating also Dennis Rodman, one of the least boring humans, I think, on the face of the planet. So
yeah,
I don't know. Feels like maybe there was some sour grapes there. Who knows? Speculating.
It's possible.
Interesting to me, again, that the synchronicities, again, between these two cases, different but the same, are really interesting. That he had this kind of connection with Serena, but they kind of dated on and off. They weren't necessarily together. And then at the time, there was this thing that brought them together. That is around the time when this disappearance happened. Again, another layer to that, which is interesting to me. I am very curious about what the real timeline is, because to the pastor's point at that funeral, we will never know. None of us were there.
Right.
Everyone who is there literally is either currently never been found
Yeah.
or has passed.
Correct.
So we will never know. But I want to get into this for a second, because Kevin shows up in February. He stays on the boat with them. He shows up in February in New Zealand. He stays in the boat with them. We know this until the end of May. And that's when they're like, we need a little break. We're going to fly to Tahiti, and the captain and Miles stay on the boat. And the plan is after that, we're going to sail to Hawaii. And then he's like, oh, well, that's cool. I can meet my girlfriend there. I'll come with you.
Yeah.
I guess maybe for them, they're like, well, we will have had a break for a bit, so that's fine. But there was something about that I was like, doesn't add up to me.
Sure.
And the detail that you mentioned that bumped me along those lines was you mentioned that Miles flew from Tahiti to LA.
Yeah.
So which story is true? Were you with the captain wherever, waiting for them to be finished with their trip in Tahiti, and then they got back on the boat and then they sailed off, and after a couple of weeks all hell broke loose? Or did it happen before then? Or did it happen when they got back on the boat immediately and then you flew from Tahiti to LA? Something doesn't add up there. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, when did this all happen? That doesn't make sense. And I don't know, again, who we're basing all of this on. I'm assuming we're basing a fair amount of this on Miles' story.
Right.
Right? Because he was the only one there.
Right.
That we know of.
Yes. And the last
and
time,
his girlfriend, maybe, I don't know.
Right. The last time that that anyone ever spoke to Bison or Serena was like July 8th. And then the boat was seen coming into the harbor, and it got stuck on rocks on July 13th.
And what harbor would that, where?
In Tahiti.
I see.
So it's possible that they had gone out into the ocean, and then 5 days, something happened in 5 days where he came back alone.
To Tahiti.
Yes.
I mean, that feels like it has to have gone that way, doesn't it?
It has to have, like
it's
the
again,
vastness of the ocean. Like
there's so and okay, a couple other details here again. So building off of that, there was no distress calls sent.
Right.
2 weeks later, there was nothing. To my point is that it's like 2 weeks later, was there nothing because he wasn't on the boat, and nor was anyone else.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? Like, no word for several weeks. Again, these are my notes here. That's when the suspicious activity on Bison's account starts. That's when, and here are the details where this falls apart for me. Okay, so this pirate theory, great. Why does that mean Miles needs to change Bison's outgoing voicemail message? What about the pirates coming and holding them hostage means you need to take his phone and change his voicemail message? That doesn't add up.
Yep.
Also, if, let's say, he did this deal, let's say for a second to the pirate, because pirates are real. Now, I don't know, and I'm not being glib, I don't know if current day pirates trade in gold. I feel like they may trade in cash or other things. Like, I don't know. Like,
sure.
I don't know. But to me, like, the specific that he was looking for gold coins feels odd. But let's say for a second that this is true. The police bring him in because this is odd, this whole gold thing. He says it's for these Polynesian pirates who have my brother and his girlfriend held hostage. And they can't keep him at that point.
Right.
If you have now alerted the police that your brother and his girlfriend are being held hostage by pirates, I understand. I guess the police were like, okay, oh, well, good luck. Like, it sounds to me like they just didn't believe him, so they didn't really follow up on that. Right? But
Right.
if this is true, that they were
Right.
being held by pirates, at that point, wouldn't you say like, well, I've outed myself to the police. I may as well call the Coast Guard, or let's get in touch with the Navy, or I don't know who the proper channel would be. But it's
Sure.
just odd to me if you've already outed the secret, which is this is ransom money because my loved ones are being held hostage. At that point, to me, it's like, okay, I've already blown up the whole thing. Somebody help me.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He just leaves smiling and then goes to Tijuana.
Yep.
Now, Tijuana, I don't really understand the connection there because, and look, who knows where the boat is at this moment or not. I can't remember if it had come back in yet or not at this point. I don't think it had at this point, but like, it just, there's just no part of it that just feels like nonsense. And then the fact that he tells his girlfriend, oh, actually, just kidding. I got into a bad fight with her. Serena was accidentally killed. The captain caught all of it, said, we have to take her in and report this. So Bison beat him to death. I'm going to talk about that in a second. And then obviously I had to shoot him and kill him. And then obviously I had to weigh down the bodies. First of all, coming with weights onto that boat was giving me shades of the Kim Wall story with Peter Madsen, where it was the same thing, where you saw him getting on the boat with the saw, in that case, weights, all of these things,
Right.
where he was like, she died accidentally. And obviously I had to weigh down her body. Like, what? That is just not, I can't, never going to fly with me.
Yep.
First of all. Second of all, let's go through this for a second. Realistically here. And this is again what was bringing me Natalie Wood vibes, because it was like, we will never know what happened on that boat, sadly, of course, unless one of these people is still alive. But they're in some sort of fight. Believable.
Yes.
Serena tries to get in the middle, or unfortunately is just present and gets shoved in some way.
Yeah.
Hits her head, is killed. Believable. This I'm on board with.
Yep.
The captain comes up. You have said that what you could find about him was he was very well respected. A well-respected ship captain, boat captain is going to say, we have to go to land. That is protocol. We have to report this, etc. All of this sounds plausible. Where it breaks down for me is then Bison beat the captain to death. And so then I had to shoot him. Because here's another question. How did the boat get anywhere then? How did you get anywhere? Do you know how to captain a boat, Miles? It's not easy.
Right.
It's not super user friendly from my personal experience of the times I've been on boats. Like, you know what I mean? Like, sure, you've been around it. Maybe he was giving you lessons. Okay, fine. I'll buy that too. But do we believe that Bison out of nowhere would beat this man to death when his loved one, the woman that he described as being this like love of his life, that he believed was like the one soulmate, deep connection. Do we believe that his reaction to, we have to go to land and report this, would be beating that man to death?
No, not even a little bit.
Right?
No, I agree with you. I completely agree. I fully buy the first part of that story.
100%.
I can see that as being plausible.
Yeah.
I just feel like, to your point, if something happens to her, I can see him being upset, but I don't see him being like, well, we can't report this. It's like, no, he's gonna want that reported. I'm just curious if he did in fact beat Bertrand with a wrench. He would have had to have shot Bison first, because Bison wouldn't have stood back and watched that happen. So then it's like, did you pull out a gun and shoot them both? Did you pull out a gun? Instinct. You shot Bertrand, and then before he could stop you, you shot Bison.
Here's my instinct.
Yeah.
Either that, yes, or okay, three things. Either what you just described.
Yeah.
Or he just shot all three of them.
Most likely. Yeah. Possible.
Why are we, I believe the fight scenario 100%. Yeah. I believe her accidentally getting hurt 100%, but also no one was there. No, there's been no bodies. So
Yeah.
it could just be that he point blank execution style. We don't fucking know. He could have killed them in their sleep.
Yeah.
We don't know. Third scenario, fight back on the table.
Yep.
He pulls out a gun. Bertrand comes up. What the fuck happened? We've got to report this. Bison is like, yeah, we do. My brother's out of control. Miles takes out gun, kills Bison, who is the greater threat to him physically in this moment.
Yep.
Turns gun on Bertrand and says, you're going to help me. And we're going to get rid of his bodies. And we're going to get this boat where it needs to go.
Sure.
And then at whatever point that he has what he needs of Bertrand, he kills him then. Or whatever. Or Bertrand is still alive and is in the wind.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like, again, the boat was found painted, the name changed. How would Miles know where to begin? Now I'm turning on Bertrand for a second, but not turning on him. Again, at this point, I also, what choice does he have potentially? Who knows? But you know what I'm saying? Like, they did spend time alone on that boat. We know that to be fact.
Yeah.
When Bison and Serena went to Tahiti, we know that Bertrand and Miles were alone on that boat. It sounds like from end of May to July, which is like 4 to 6 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks, depending on the timing. So a fair amount of time. Fair amount of time. Is it possible? And I'm not saying, I don't know that I believe that Bertrand has a horse in the race in terms of like, let's kill them for money or something. Not that.
No.
But is it possible that Miles got him enough on his side that when shit hit the fan, it was like, I'm sorry, buddy, you got to help me. And then Miles is like, well, now I'm implicated in this. I will help you. And then I will disappear. Has the boat been tested for like blood spatter? Like,
well, they allegedly got out, like found their samples, sent them away. And then the last thing that was ever said about it was like, it needs to be verified. And then nothing has ever been posted about it, which is wild. What
did they find then? Or what did they not find? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's when I go, I don't know. That's what makes me think, is Bertrand still alive? Is that the like missing link to this whole thing?
Sure. It's possible. I mean, for me, the only thing I think, if they were like, oh, it's blood, they tested it, found out it wasn't blood. My instinct is he forced them off the boat with that gun.
Could be that too.
And left them just to die.
The only thing that doesn't add up to me is, and again, they were alone on that boat for 4 to 8 weeks. So is it possible he could have gotten some sort of sailing lessons captaining lessons in that time? Yes. But what doesn't add up to me is, how does the boat because where was the boat found at the end of the day?
In Tahiti.
It was found in Tahiti.
Yeah.
And it had been repainted and everything.
Yeah.
So then why is he going to Tijuana with the gold? That doesn't add up. I think we can agree that's just hooey.
Yeah. Well, he never even officially got the gold.
Right.
Because he tried to get the gold and they never let him have it. So he just skipped town. I also want to know, did he take money out of his brother's account? I assume that he did. How else would he have afforded to fly home?
Yeah.
So I have a lot of questions that nobody else seems to be
okay, so then explain this to me then.
there.
Okay, let's go back for one quick sec.
Yeah.
They're on the boat. Bison and Serena are in Tahiti. They go to pick them up in Tahiti. We are to believe that they sailed for a few weeks, given the story that we're piecing together.
Yeah.
No distress calls, no whatever. And then eventually he shows up on land buying gold coins and gets pulled in by the cops.
Yes.
How does the boat at that point get back to Tahiti? Like, to me, but then we also know that he apparently flew from Tahiti to LA. So to me, it's like the boat never left Tahiti. They took them to Tahiti and they either had that time, again, you would have to question people on that island at wherever they were staying to get a timeline of that. But to me, as soon as they got back on that boat feasibly, like, that was it. It happened there. Because I agree with you. It does feel like it makes the most sense that he just probably got rid of the 3 of them. But the whole stumbling block I'm having is like, but then how did he captain the boat for whatever distance? Because
Yeah.
unlike DIYing your furniture, your patio furniture, I don't know that you're going to be able to easily Google how to captain a boat when you're probably somewhere without a signal in the middle of the ocean. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's not easy. A boat of that size, one of those catamarans, like, it's not easy.
Oh, 100%. I mean, there's
to-
something to be said for it getting caught on rocks outside, like 5 days after they last heard from anybody.
So that's it. Right?
Like it had, like I could see it being, it got caught on rocks because an amateur was behind the wheel.
Exactly.
But it is more than possible that in his like few weeks on that boat that he got basics, just like how to start it, how to stop it, how to whatever. And then was like, I'm just going to do a straight shot. And he did a straight shot and got caught on the rocks.
That feels like it has to be it.
Right?
Yes. I think
Went
that
out
has to be it.
barely enough, just enough that there's nobody.
Yep.
And then.
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah. It doesn't make sense otherwise. Again, it's like that's the piece to me. Like, this isn't like we were all in a car somewhere where most adults can drive a car.
Sure.
Right. Most of, no judgment if you can't, but you know what I'm saying? Like, most adults can drive a car. That's a different story where it's like, it could have been any of them. It's like, you're right. I think that is a key to it too, where it's like, if it hit the rocks, we also know that Bertrand was apparently this like very seasoned, well-respected captain. So it doesn't feel to me like he would just hit rocks.
Right.
And they had disappeared at that point anyway, but you know what I'm saying? It feels to me like they pick them up on the boat. They sail for whatever amount of time to open water.
Yeah.
Miles does his thing. The three of them get dumped. And then he's like, I'll just take the boat back. I have this minimal training. I can do this. And he got it close, but I'm sure he didn't stick the landing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that just feels like that's what it has to be.
Oh, I agree.
It's also very interesting to me. The other thing I just wanted to bring up very quickly, that he ended up being found on that beach unconscious and then ended up passing away from an OD on insulin. And what are the chances of that, giving last week's episode about Malcolm Webster?
Yeah.
And there was ODs about overdosing on insulin there. Like, that's just something I've never heard of before. And when you brought it up in the Malcolm Webster episode, I was like, to be honest with you, it chilled me a little bit to my core, because I never thought of that as like, oh, what a readily available, like, insulin you can access. It's not like it's like, I made this, I made meth. That's like, you have to have a recipe, a bathtub. I don't know how it's made. But insulin is something that people can get prescribed and that you can feasibly get your hands on, not super easily, but fairly easily. And it's not an illegal drug. We're not talking about a heroin or whatever.
Right.
The idea, again, that you could just give somebody a big old shot of insulin and it kills them. I was like, oh my God, that's right. I've just never thought about that it's like, yeah, you could kill someone that way. How chilling. And then the fact that it came up again in the next week's episode is just like, again, what are the chances?
I know.
It happens on this show. We have so many things that keep coming back.
Right.
But anyway, and that to me too, the fact that he told this story to his girlfriend where he was admitting some guilt. It's like, he probably had all of the guilt. The fact that he called his mother and said, do you still love me? The fact that then he was like, I could never do this. And then the fact that it does appear that he did take his own life. It all speaks to that he was
guilty,
responsible for this. Yeah.
It
and I
feels
think
to me like he felt that they find that boat, they're going to know that they're going to find out what's happened, especially because he was found the day the boat was found. Like, he did this the day the boat was found. It just feels.
Where was the boat the rest of the time? Because he had gone to land and dealt with the police, right?
The boat was found. The boat was found. It was the boat, as far as we know, he docked it because he was seen on the boat July 13th and 16th, he was seen leaving the boat from that marina where it was found 2 months later. So I think because the boat had a different paint job and a different name, if they were ever looking for the boat, they were like, oh, yeah, that's not it. But someone looked closer and went, well, it's a shitty paint job. And it's look closer. You can see the letters from the other one behind it. And I think someone just took closer time to go, oh, that is the boat we've been looking for. So it sat there for like 2 months without people realizing that was the
right. So the day that it was discovered that it was like, oh, this is the boat we were looking for.
Yes.
Was
September 13th.
Was the day that he was found and then eventually died.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It almost feels like he could have tipped somebody off.
It's possible if his guilt was enough.
I feel like I could believe that because this guy feels like, it feels to me again like this is one of those cases. And listen, you hit all the nails on the head when you were talking again about how he desperately wanted to play sports, couldn't because of asthma. His brother is a natural who makes it to the NBA and then just gives it up.
Yeah.
And while again, I do commend him for following his bliss. Truly, I can understand how his brother Miles would be like, that would be that would be challenging for him. I get that.
Yeah.
And we, again, like all of these details, I think you painted a great picture of it's like, is this just that this person just got pushed to the edge and the jealousy just became too much? But then to that, because it doesn't feel like this guy is like some sort of, it doesn't feel like he's like a killer, like a psychopath, like a sociopath. It doesn't, I don't get that vibe from what we know. And I know we don't know everything, but I could also see that person just being eaten alive and then being like, again, when he says to his mother, like, I couldn't do this, it almost feels like that's what he's trying to say to himself. He's trying to convince himself that he didn't do it. I mean, fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. But I feel like that and I mean, it's tragic again that we will obviously never know. And I agree, very tragic that it's like, if he did kill his brother and then their mother chose to have a joint funeral, that feels,
I know.
That's rough. Like energetically.
Yes.
Wow. Well, listen, Christy Oxborrow, fantastic episode. These two really, again, just have me confounded, but the unsolved ones always do.
Yeah.
But this one again, both of them, but this one again, it's just, I think anytime you bring pirates into the conversation,
sure,
which again, I agree are obviously a real thing. You just, it's like, you're on board for something. I don't want to say extreme, but intense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And I didn't know pirates were going to play into it until I got further in and surprise pirates, I guess.
I love it.
It is what it is.
Do you have any final thoughts? Any last theories or anything that we didn't hit on?
Oh, I mean, I feel like we've hit on pretty much anything I was thinking. I mean, the second you hear 4 people went on a boat, 1 came back, that's movie level. Oh, well, we know who did it. And so I did go into this with the bias of, oh, I bet it's him. And I try so hard to look at it from both sides. And I don't know if I believe that it was premeditated. I can see the anger and the jealousy of a sibling, especially the younger one, doing what he would have loved. And then the walking away, I can see that. And I absolutely believe it started with a fight. And it got to a point where he was like, well, one of them died, whether it was an accident or not. Maybe the 2 of them were fighting and he pulled out a gun and somebody accidentally got shot. And then it was like, well, I can't do this. And so he just had to clean up and finish it off and try and live his life, but then got caught and went to Mexico and thought, I'll lay low. It'll be fine. It'll all blow over. And then the boat gets found and he's like, well, that's it for me. Or the guilt was so overwhelming for him that he was like, I can't keep living like this.
The two things that just don't make sense to me: buying weights to go on a boat.
Yep.
Okay, maybe you want to work out on the boat, but also, I mean, this boat was like a baller boat. We know this from the way you described it.
Yeah.
I would probably bet that he had some sort of weight room or gym or something on that boat from what it sounded like.
Sure.
Also, there's lots of workouts you can do without weights. Also, it's really difficult to travel with weights. Like, how did you get to New Zealand with weights or wherever? Like, did you literally fly to New Zealand and go, I have to go to the sporting goods store and buy weights to get on this boat? I just don't think that's top of mind for even the most gym focused people.
Right.
Because there's all kinds of things you can do with body weight and all of the above, if you really want to ensure that you're continuing to do your workouts,
Sure.
which is someone's prerogative. But you know what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't add up to me. And then the thing I will never let go of is changing his brother's voicemail to his own voice.
Yeah.
That's where it falls apart. It feels to me like he had this moment of, oh, I was going to make a terrible joke and I shouldn't, of I'm the captain now, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
But truly, I'm not to be jokey. It's I shouldn't, but you know what I'm saying, of like, I'm the one who wins now. I'm in the driver's seat. I'm taking this over. I'm changing the voicemail. I'm taking your money. I'm going into your accounts. I'm doing all these things. But then when he got to that side of it, it was just, again, that reality of what you've done and living with that was just too overwhelming.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing research as always. So appreciate your work. This was truly a riveting episode.
I'm jazzed. I heard about the one and then I heard about the other one. And when I started looking in, I was like, I'll be lucky if we get an hour out of this. And we can't put out just an hour. We don't know how to do it physically.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, maybe I can do them together. Because I was adamant that I was going to do each of these cases. And then doing two at once is very weird for your brain.
I bet.
To try and not cross people in between. So I had to here is one, and then here is another, and then take the two final and put them together, and then just back away.
Well, you did it flawlessly. It was
you
masterful.
were too kind.
I speak the truth. Thank you, dear listeners, for being with us for this episode of the show. We so appreciate your support. If you haven't already, give us a follow on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails, on Twitter at Not Detectives. If you'd like a little more content, we have bonus episodes, live monthly Q&As, a monthly poll to determine one of the episodes per month on this feed of the show, on Patreon, patreon.com/True Crime and Cocktails to learn more about that. And the only place for official True Crime and Cocktails merch is truecrewmerch.com. So check that out if you haven't already. Christy, do you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
On the next True Crime and Cocktails, Susan Cox Powell.
Now, that was our May Patrons Poll winner, again on Patreon. If you are a subscriber over there, you can take part in a poll to choose one of the episodes per month we cover over here. And that was the winner. So stay tuned for that. Christy, do you want to say goodnight to the people?
Good night, Dave Grohl.
Oh, yeah. Good night, Funko Speed Collection.